Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to start. Madam Administrator, are you all set for the closing of the
Yes, Madam
committee
Chair.
meeting?
Yes, we are all set and we are in the air in this one. So ready when you are.
So we already said that we would end that committee meeting when we started this one. So we are adjourning that meeting and we are starting the Appropriations, Conservation and Development Agency presentations. And first up, we have Commissioner Hurlbert from the Department of Agriculture. Commissioner, the floor is yours. And if you just want to give us a brief overview of what you want to talk about, and then we'll ask questions.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to the committee members that are here and listening or paying attention via Zoom. For the record, I'm Brian Holbert. I'm the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. I'm joined by Dr. Kaylee Royston to my right, who is our Director of Government Affairs, and to my left, Nathan Wilson, who is our Director of Operations. I don't have much of a prepared statement to open with. I wasn't sure if we wanted to do any prepared statements or just dig into member questions, but I'll use the time for the members and offer them the floor. The budget is relatively stable from last year's. The only significant change that we have is they removed a number of items. The governor's budget removed or recommended removing a number of items from our other expenses line into our various grants line. With a 20% reduction on a number of the grants that were within that original line, except for, and I think this is important in a question that's come up before the committee previously, except for the Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids, which maintains the $1 million funding that it has had previously. So with that, Senator, I'm happy to answer questions, or if you want to excuse me, the choice is yours.
So let's just say that even if I wanted to, I would not. But so on the other expenses, if you could bring to the working group what grants were impacted by that, and if there are any other items in your OE, what they are. So detail
Absolutely.
what is in your OE, left in your OE, and what is in this various grants line item, and which ones were given a 20% cut. And relative to, if you could go over both the senior food vouchers and the WIC coupon program for fresh produce for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did submit the line items or the individual grants in our testimony, but we can get that electronically to distribute to all of the members. Our Farmers Market Nutrition Program has been doing amazingly well. We're very proud of the work that has happened over the past 2 years in particular. We were one of 8 states in 2023 that received a federal grant to move our FMNP program from a paper voucher system, like a coupon system, to a debit card style system. And so with that means we have access to a lot more data and a lot more communications with the individual participating members. And for people who are listening, the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, there are eligible members through the WIC community, and then seniors over 60 who qualify based on their income. So up to 2023, I think all of us will recall in this subcommittee that we had about $650,000 of FMNP redemptions on any given year, which we thought was pretty good. As we progressed to the debit card style, we went from about that $650 to over $1 million in 2024. So that's $1 million of families and $1 million of seniors that are benefiting and having access to Connecticut grown produce, honey, and chicken eggs from their local farms that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. So that's an important piece from the food security component. But I also want to point out that it's also $1 million in sales that farmers were able to realize at market rates. So that's $1 million into the ag economy that those line items supported. And just a reminder, it is both a federally funded and a state-funded program with contributions from both entities. So we are excited about how well we've been able to do. We've done pop-up markets across the state in order to facilitate additional access. And I have I actually had in my environment testimony, but if you give me a second here, I can pull up exactly how many markets, farmers, and 103 farmers markets, 22 pop-up markets, 29 farm stands, benefits redeemed by 217 certified farmers, benefiting 53,480 WIC participants and 20,047 senior participants. So that's pretty far-reaching for a program. Requires a lot of partnership, not only with our farmers market managers, but with our farmers, with the Department of Public Health and the WIC program. We have weekly meetings with them, and our senior distribution sites that are distributing those cards to eligible seniors. And then our IT component, because we do have a hotline that people can call and check on their balance and ask questions if they're having a problem at the market. So really excited about what's happened on that program and the amount that we've been able to grow it in the past couple of years.
And one of your line items talks about dairy farmer agricultural sustainability. And it's something that we've been talking a lot about this session and actually over the last few months. Can you let us know, where do dairy farmers get their funds from the, and how is that price set?
Yeah, so we go to the either a farmer's market or a farm stand or home delivery of milk, a grocery store, and pick up milk, and we expect that there's some flexibility and movement in the price that we pay. Farmers don't have that control. Farmers have their price set by the federal milk marketing order for the eastern states out of Boston. There's a federal formula. The joke when I was a member of the House and we had a hearing on this issue, the joke back then was, and I think it holds true, is that there was two people in the United States who understand what the federal milk marketing order does, and they disagree. And so the reality is it's a very complex formula. And the USDA over the past couple of years has tried to figure out how to fix the formula, recognizing that it's not perfect for dairy farmers across the U.S. In each of the regions, but they haven't been able to do that. So the price that a Connecticut dairy farmer gets paid for the milk that they produce is set out of Boston at a federally regulated price point. The farmer has no control over that unless they are doing direct sales. So if you think about some of what Oak Ridge does through Mountain Dairy or through the Modern Milkman, Mountain Dairy has some, the farmer's cow has some ability, but the reality is the vast majority of the milk produced in the state of Connecticut, the price point is set by the federal government, and it does not reflect the cost of production to produce milk in Connecticut.
And how many dairy farms are left in Connecticut?
I believe we're at 79 licensed dairies as of today.
And we have a problem right now that we have seen a decrease in the cost, the reimbursement by $5 a hundredweight.
Yeah.
And what is the impact of that on a farmer?
Yeah, I actually pulled the data this morning, thinking that we might have this conversation. And last year at this time, Class 3 milk, which is your cheese, was $19.20. That's what farmers were getting paid for milk that was made into cheese. Today, it's $16.94. So you're looking at about a $3 decrease. For butter, it's a little bit more stable, but they're projecting that the price of milk paid to farmers for Connecticut will be about $15. Yukon runs for our quarterly payments a cost of production calculation. They average around $25 a hundredweight. So it costs about $25 to produce a hundredweight, which is how we measure milk, and not in gallons. It costs about $25 to produce a hundredweight, and they're projected to be paid $15 per hundredweight. Not too many businesses can take a 40% reduction from the cost to the price point. And so the dairy farmers are in a very precarious position where they have significant cash flow problems when not getting paid. They have challenges with investing in their infrastructure, maintaining their herd, doing the things that we, as people who benefit from having dairy farms in the state, all would like them to be able to do. We had a meeting, Senator, and for the benefit of the other members here, yesterday on dairy, and one of the dairy farmers said that the milk check that he got for this year versus last year was $500,000 different on a monthly basis. not too many businesses can run the same operation and take a $500,000 hit. And so I think that's where the dairy industry is asking and looking for support and help to help rebalance and recognizing that the federal milk marketing order does not work in a state like Connecticut, but it is tremendously important for the state of Connecticut to have working dairy farms. They have about 70,000 acres of working land, about 19,000 cows. There's about I forget how many thousands of jobs that they have, but they are the economy of scale in Connecticut agriculture is due to the benefit that dairy farmers bring to that industry. So every other farm in the state benefits by having a strong dairy sector. Small vegetable operations, greenhouse operations, all of them have receive some benefit from having the dairy farm industry here in the state. And so that's why it's important to look at that question.
Thank you. Representative Walker?
Thank you, and good afternoon. Good to
afternoon.
see you. When we were talking to the dairy farmers, I asked about, well, is there a strong local market for their product? And they said that they do have a market here, but we can't mandate it. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, great question, complicated answer. So
what we do.
That's what we right. So the vast majority of milk flows through the co-ops, the Dairy Farmers of America and Agrimark. Agrimark is the brand of Cabot cheese. And so there's not a lot of opportunity for direct sales of milk. We have seen, and through the department's grant programs, we have invested in more small-scale processing. But there's only so far you can reach, and at some point you need volume. I believe Seth Baylor, the CEO of Oak Ridge Dairy out of Ellington, will be here later today to testify. This would be a great question for him to talk about, even through Modern Milkman, which reaches about 40% of the geographic mass of Connecticut on home deliveries with milk, versus the amount of milk that he produces. You know, it's a fraction, and so he's got to find a home for, I think it's 80% of the milk that he produces. And you're not going to be able to do that in direct sales and bottling, because the vast majority of that milk's got to go to a plant that's owned by a co-op or has a contract with a co-op. So it's not like the dairy farmer can sell it directly to Guida's New Britain, you know, for instance. All of the milk that goes into Guida is a DFA co-op member. So it's not an access point if I want to start a farm that I can go in there. Given the challenges in the dairy industry, co-ops aren't accepting new members. So even if I wanted to start at my own dairy farm, I wouldn't have a home for my milk. I wouldn't have a market for it. I would only be able to do the small-scale processing.
That's horrible.
It's-
I mean, it's like a way of isolating, and you want to encourage people to do it because we all know that's better for the health.
Right.
I mean, purchasing in your environment helps to keep, you know, for your immune system. So, because when we met, and they said it's against the law, and I was like, what? And so, there's
The
something
dairy
wrong with
industry is heavily regulated. I mean, again, we think you walk into the back of the grocery store, you get a gallon of milk, and you know what's the big deal. The politics, the federal programs around dairy are tremendously complicated, and it was created that way to make sure that there was a healthy dairy system in America, so that everybody had access to milk. But I think honestly, Congress needs to relook at, you know, what has become of that system, and is it doing what it was supposed to be doing when it was created, you know, almost 100 years ago now.
It's regulating to isolate. And that, I mean, we maintain the big, okay. You do a lot of other programs, though, with schools around the
Yeah.
state. Can you tell us about some of them?
I would love to talk about Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids, if that's what you're
Yes.
asking. Thank you. With a lot of legislative support and encouragement, for the first time in I think forever, you know, this administration has been able to put money behind our Farm to School program, which we call Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids, and we've done over $4 million in direct farm to school programming, and I think, you know, you'll hear from schools and from the farm to school advocates. It's tremendous. We've coupled that with the local Food for Schools program, which runs through the State Department of Education. So we're encouraging farmers and schools to partner. We're encouraging schools to buy directly from local farms, and we're giving them a better price point to do that. And we're creating, importantly from my perspective, we're creating market relationships. Farmers now have a wholesale account that they can sell into through a school, which has been great for both the schools who want to get better food into the students' bellies, but also for the farmers to have a little bit more of a flat revenue from a different marketplace. And it's very well subscribed. Last year, we had 82 applications that requested over $1.8 million across our 5 grant categories. And we're able to award 40 organizations with just over $920,000 in direct grants. And we can get you the list of who those awardees were. But it's not just schools, and I think that's what's really important from as the design of the Connecticut Growing for Connecticut Kids program was. It's also early childhood care centers, group child care homes, and family child care homes. So it's where the kids are, not necessarily just for the classroom or in the cafeteria, and I think that's pretty cool.
I think that's great. But I noticed, tell me I'm wrong, is that in the list of various grants category?
That would be in the list, but it's still funded at the $1 million that was in last year's budget. So it did not take a 20% cut as proposed for the other grants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When I didn't, that's one of the reasons why I look, because when I didn't see it, I said, oh, they didn't. So they didn't.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank you for what you do, and I've got 2 schools that are going to call you.
Great. Happy to have
Yeah,
that conversation.
yeah. I really appreciate what you do, and I appreciate the fact that you go out and talk to the people and make sure they're connected.
Thank
We
you.
want the kids and the families to have access to better quality food. So, and what better quality than Connecticut?
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Nuccio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the dairy farmers, how often does the federal government change those rates?
They changed on a monthly rate.
So they change it monthly?
Yes, yeah.
And have we seen like a steady decline? Like, is it change? Is it very volatile? Does it go up and down a lot?
It's more
historic.
volatile on a annual basis than necessarily on a monthly basis, but the trend line is what continues across annually. And when we created the Ag Sustainability Account in 2009, the recognition was that dairy was on a 3-year cycle. One really good year, one really bad year, 1 year that was some recovery, and then back to a really good year. So dairy farmers could kind of plan on, okay, on a really good year, we need to use this money for 2 years out until we get back, back into a positive cash flow. What's happened now is that the spikes are not as high and the troughs are longer. So it's not a 3-year cycle that you can plan for. It is a lower max and a longer minimum. And so it's hard to cash flow that. It's hard to, dairy runs a lot of money through, right? The cows get fed every day. They get milked every day. The energy costs are tremendous. You've got to move the milk, every day or every other day. So your transportation costs are high. So there's a lot of cash that moves through a dairy farm with very low margin. And so it's just hard to be able to do that. And the only way to do it is to take out debt. And why are you going to take out debt when your cost of or the payment is $10 less than what you're making per unit, 40% discount? And quite honestly, what bank wants to loan to that customer, right? That's not a strong position to be in. So I think by providing some support in addition to the support that is currently available, it allows the dairy farmers to bridge through this period. I also think from the landscape of Connecticut, our big farm is a small farm in the rest of the nation, right? Mm-hmm. And our small farms don't exist in the rest of the nation. I had a chance to speak with the Secretary of Ag from Iowa. He's losing, dozens of 250 head farms, and he's planning on gaining 4 10,000 head farms in the next year. I don't know that that's sustainable in Connecticut. I don't know that that's the right model for the dairy industry, but that's where other states are going. And I think if we're able to support smaller farms at this point, then we can prevent that sort of outcome for future years.
So this has been trending down for a while?
So it only started trending down in the last quarter of 2025. Quite honestly, I think if it was trending down earlier, I think something would have probably been, there probably would have been a discussion about including it in the Connecticut Farm Bill last year. But it wasn't on the radar at that point in time. And so it kind of, the trend started happening after that bill was passed and signed into law, which is why it's becoming such a concerning issue for the dairy industry today.
So what happens when it peaks again to the money that's in this account, right? So if it's a you know, a sustainability account, is it given out every year regardless? Or when it's a high year, do we say, you know, you're good right now, we're going to hold it for, like, how does it function?
So on a quarterly basis, we have a contract with the University of Connecticut's WIC Center, and they do the cost of production. And so we only pay out if the cost of production is higher than the price point being paid to the farmer. So that's kind of the insurance in there, that we're not just always paying out regardless of the price. I will say in the 16 years that the program's existed, the cost of production has always been higher than the price paid to the dairy farmer. So on a quarterly basis, they have always received that payment.
Okay. And then the last thing is you mentioned that the dip, the 25 to 15, and that it's not sustainable in a state like Connecticut. Can you elaborate on that? What is different?
A number of things. And the dairy industry in New England is very different than the dairy industry in the Midwest or in the South.
Like you said, size for one.
Size for
optimization.
one. Dairy farmers in Connecticut, doing the dairy component of being a dairy farm is a part of their job, right? They also have to raise an acre of corn and an acre of grass for every animal that they're milking. So if you've got a 500 head herd, you need 1,000 acres of cropland to support that herd. To drive down the cost of your production, you've got to grow your own. I went to a dairy farm, this was back again when I was in the legislature in Arizona. It was in the desert. There wasn't a blade of grass to be seen. It was a 10,000 head dairy farm. All they do is dairy. All they do is milk cows. They feed and milk cows. That's their, you know, it raise obviously, but they don't have any cropping responsibilities. They don't have any manure management responsibilities. You know, they should have water concerns, which, you know, we're fortunate not to have. But their focus is really just on the cow care and making sure that that animal is producing as much milk as they can and making sure that the health is there for the animal. Our dairy farmers need to do all of that, plus run major crop operations, plus run all the equipment and make sure that their equipment can get it out on the field and get off the field. Because as we know, you know, you can't go mud bogging in a combine. That's not good for anybody. So they have a much more complex business model than a lot of dairies in the rest of the nation. So all of those costs add up when you're thinking about the cost of production to the individual farm.
I know I'm like around over my two, but it's all one subject. So
Does it count? Oh, go ahead.
in
There
regard
are
to
other
that-
things we could talk about.
There are definitely other things that I think we should talk about, but this one I think is just really important, right?
Yes.
You know, like I'm familiar with Oak Ridge's model, and I know their direct sales model and stuff like that, and I know that they have some variability there, but you know, like I said in the meeting that we were all at, I grew up when Ellington was all full of cows, right? Like it was all dairy everywhere, Moser, all of that stuff was there, and I hate seeing it go away. Do you feel like, is there room then? Do you think like the acre of corn and grass, is that something you think we have to continue to sustain, or is it a harder business model? Like, if it makes it harder for them to do business in Connecticut because they have these regulations that other states don't have, right? And that affects how much flexibility you have to kind of roll with the federal pricing, right? Are we going to look at that, or do we still think, no, we want to have that? That's the model we have to have.
Well, I think if there's a dairy farm that figured out that didn't need to do all the cropping, they would not do the cropping. And a couple dairy farms have tried to only buy in their feed. It's just prohibitively expensive. I mean, it just adds to the cost. I mean, the amount of feed that you need to give an animal and the amount that you have to put out is so high that it's not a model that works for a farm of size in Connecticut. You can do it if you're, you know, small, under 50 head maybe, but once you get to, you know, kind of commercial size, it's just not feasible. We did, and Seth can talk about this, through our Climate Smart Ag and Forestry grant, through our Restoration Resiliency and Preparedness grant. Oak Ridge did receive one of our grants for $100,000. He was able to purchase a robotic watering autonomous robot. It's this huge 3-wheeled, it looks like an airplane on wheels, and it goes through the cornfield and drops either water or nutrients between the corn. So with a $100,000 grant from the state, in addition to, I think he paid $300,000 out of his pocket, he got this $400,000 piece of equipment. He was able to get it on the field in July of last year. So, late after the corn was planted, it was already coming up. But he was able to realize a 20% yield increase. So from the same land, he's getting 20% more crop. That's where I think the state can be helpful as well, because now that drives down the cost of production. He also, not only did he drive down the cost of production by making it easier to get more production out of one field, but this farm was 7 miles from his home farm. So when he was bringing manure to spread on that farm, he was making 6-8 trips at a time in a tanker truck, diesel, very low, fuel efficiency, through back roads to get to the field to spread it. So now he's saving all of that fuel cost. He's saving all of that hauling cost and his staff time to get there, and he's getting a better yield. That's what we'd call precision agriculture and climate smart agriculture, right? So I think we can help with those projects through some of our grant programs, but we need to do a lot of that in order for it to make a cumulative difference. But I think if the question is, do they need to crop? I think the answer is yes, and I don't think there's a way for us to get around that.
Thank you.
Senator Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good
It's good
afternoon.
to see you, and I just want to tip my hat to the department for all the work that you've done and the landmark, actually, programs that you have stewarded. But I do want to ask you, we have this whole debacle on the 490 issue. The working group, I guess, has just begun to take on the issue. When is that report going? I mean, we've reverted, so we're back
Yeah.
to where we were in 2020 or whatever.
Yeah.
But when's that report due?
So we don't have a due date on the report, and part of that is by the virtue of the working group, and that we want to make sure that all of the members have an opportunity to bring ideas and vet different ideas for how we're going to collect data, the methodology that we'll use to analyze the data and generate future recommended land use values. I would imagine it's going to take 6 to 8 meetings, just by what we've talked about, which would put us probably into early summer. But I think part of the question, I think what you're getting at, Senator, if I may, is that when are we going to have new recommended land use values? And I think the recommendations that come out of the working group aren't going to require necessarily legislative fixes, because it's the data collection component, and that's not in statute. And so we should be able to even if we finish later in the summer, we should be able to have new recommended land use values for the towns to use for their 2027 grand list year. Now, I think we have opened the door to this and asked the working group members to bring ideas to the table. If there are things that need a legislative fix, I think we'll have to wait until next year's legislative session to address them, because we'd want to make sure we get through the proposed bill process and the public hearing process and have that opportunity for more people to comment.
Yeah, the process, I think, is really important. And I guess my question is, so does this report come back to the legislature, or just goes back to OPM? Do we not see this? Because when this all kind of unfolded, quite frankly, a lot of us were taken aback.
No, it will go to OPM to be used in the future ones, but we have been in with Kaylee. We can share out information. We've shared out to a number of the members who had questions in advance. We shared out the minutes, the agenda, the website, and
I
the
see the
email
web,
from the initial working group, and we can keep members of the legislature updated as the process continues. There's certainly a desire for the public interaction.
Absolutely, and we just get through with the conversation about how important the farm industry is to the economy of the state of Connecticut. This is integral to that whole initiative. So if we're and even in my district, which is primarily urban, I've got the rural part where second generation, third generation, they do not want to go into the business. They're trying to sell it off. And that's where I think you said we had 79 dairy farmers.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. So this is I could not be more front and center. And if I have two questions, I want to just ask about the animal control voucher program.
Yeah.
We maxed out again, but
Yes.
we were changing the cycle, the calendar for which those vouchers were available. And I just want to know, has that in any way helped? Because in the past, what I was hearing is that, by the time the voucher comes out, the season is already passed and we've missed the window.
So I think we've got a structural problem with APCP, quite honestly, and that we just don't have enough funds that are generated through the license plate program. And so we have changed during my tenure in the department. We've changed the percentages that are allocated. We've now made it all online. We've increased the reimbursement rate to make sure that we're retaining participating veterinarians. But the problem is the pool is small, and so I think one of the things that we really need to do is convene a larger conversation with constituents about what do we want APCP to do. I mean, we talked about 490 a minute ago. That's a 60-year-old program. APCP is a 40-year-old program. It hasn't been changed substantively since the mid-'80s. So we've got to really look at structurally what is it intended to do, and is the current model working? And we've played around the edges during the past couple of years, but I think that's really what we need to do and determine, do we want to increase the size of the fund, or do we want to take one of the eligible items out? I'm just throwing that out there for ideas. If anybody's listening, I'm not suggesting that that's what we do, but I think that's the sort of conversation that we should have, because I think it was we held the APCP low income voucher program open for a week, and we were oversubscribed in less than, I think it was 28 hours.
Yeah, that is the problem. And on the veterinarian issue, so do we have an ample supply of vets who are participating in the program, or
I
is
think
that
we've got
dwindled?
ample supply, and maybe Kaylee, we've got ample supply of vets. I don't know that every vet that is on our list actually participates, but they are willing to. Is that inaccurate?
So we have a number of Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Kaylee Bryson with Department of Ag. We have a number of veterinarians across the state who are willing to participate and accept the vouchers. The biggest concern that we're seeing is the timeline. So we have slow rolled out those vouchers so that they are not all hitting people at the same time. So the veterinarians are not being inundated with people asking for this voucher, and they can accommodate that in their schedule. But I think some of the concern that we're seeing is the reimbursement rate, and we did send out a survey to veterinarians, which we are required to do every other year, to establish the market rate so that we can reevaluate what our reimbursement rate is and make sure that we are reimbursing the veterinarians at an equitable rate, but also making sure we can send out a high enough amount of vouchers and minimize the out-of-pocket cost to those constituents.
Well, thank you, because I know I'm always nipping at your heels about this. Yeah, and I think perhaps the time has come that we do a deep dive on this. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, just so everybody knows, we're going to rapid fire some questions because we're over the time frame. So Representative Dathan, that's you too. Rapid fire, ma'am. Rapid fire.
Very, very rapid fire. So I was looking at your list and that you sent over of the grants that stay in, and it wasn't very clear which ones were cut. And I know if you can make sure that when you bring it to the working group, that we see exactly where the cuts were from the original budget. In particular, I saw that Filling the Blanks, which is a great organization in my district, has 80,000, and I think they had more before. Do you know that offhand, or can you bring that to the working group?
Representative, they had 100,000, and it was a
That's what I
20%
thought.
cut for each of the line items that are on that list.
Okay, so it was
Nobody
just
was
straight
zeroed
off
out,
the
but it was
top,
20%, yeah.
and there was no sort of methodology on why there was a 20% cut?
I believe that was universal across the governor's budget.
That's a
Okay, I
government.
did see it. Yeah, I did see it across. I just was wondering within this department if there was a particular reason. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative DiCaprio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, and I'll try to be really brief. I was at a Farm Bureau meeting not too long ago, and there's a grave concern over this whole pricing thing, and to hear what you had to say about how prices are made, it's probably even more troubling. But I just want to know if there's anything we can do as state government, as far as a strategy to try to save, so these farms don't go out of business. And we can talk offline, but that's something I'm very interested in, that coming from the rural area that I have. Okay, thank you very much.
I'll just share, Representative, thank you for your interest on that. You'll have a number of dairy farmers testifying today, and I encourage you to ask them.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Senator. I'll be real quick because I know we've had discussions already and I'll have more. Two quick things on the PA 490. I'm glad the governor followed the lead of farmers and a number of legislators to enact the moratorium, even though we know it adversely affected what was scheduled for forest land taxable valuation. I did attend the first meeting of the working group. We couldn't see the video and we didn't have access to any of the documents. And I've read follow-up emails. My quick question is there is definitely an effort to make certain that there is fuller access
Yes.
to all of that, because it was a bit frustrating that that wasn't put in place for the first meeting. So my understanding is there's a plan in place to fuller and further make certain that for a meeting like that, legislators and others will be able to better access the meetings and the documents and whatever else comes out from it.
I'll say, Senator, we moved quickly, and that was the only room available that could house us, the size of the working group. It didn't have visual capacity. The room that we have booked for the next meeting does have both audio and visual. That was not intended. It was just not available. So that was on our to-do list. And I will say that the documents have been public throughout the entire process, going back to October. So they have lived on the OPM and the DOAG website. All of the documents that were referenced and were distributed by both OPM and the department in advance of the meeting, not just to the working group members, but to people who asked.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And even though there was some stuff back in October, it caught even the farming community by surprise. And we can discuss that further offline. So I'm glad there is the working group and that there's farmers at the table. And one last thing about, as you know, I represent my district, which has no lack of farmers. I always joke there's more cows than people in some of my towns, including Woodstock, as you well know. And certainly looking to see what we can do to help the dairy farmers with a financial sustainability effort. And we've had some discussions about what they do up in Massachusetts, for example. So certainly sounds like there's a continued effort on behalf of the department to be part of those discussions with us legislators to see what could be feasible and workable. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to the continued work with the department on that. And last but not least, thank you for the work the department does. It is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a couple of people that had questions that will submit questions to the administrators, Representative Ackert, Representative Cavros DeGraw. And for the committee, I think that we'll have on the Rural Caucus a meeting relative to the Dairy Sustainability Fund, and anybody is welcome to come on and listen to us chat about the dairy industry. And I'm going to turn this over to Representative Walker for the Department of Housing.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. I'd like to ask the Commissioner of Housing to please come on. She's online. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Summers, Representative Nochi. Thank you, and distinguished members of the applications.
One second. People are coming in and out, so we can't hear you, and it's important that we do hear you. So just give us a second so we
Sure.
move the people out of the chamber, move agriculture out of the chamber. Okay, one more time. Hey, Brian, take the conversation out. Thank you. Good afternoon. All right, all right. Go right ahead,
Ca-
ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, a little louder, but go ahead, go ahead. Mhm.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Summers, Representative Nochi, and distinguished members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Cela Mosquera Bruno. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Housing, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the Governor Lamont's recommended budget adjustments. Unfortunately, I cannot be in person. However, members of my staff are, and I will introduce them. Julian Pierce, Deputy Commissioner, Melvin Castillo, CFO, Michael Santoro, Director of Policy Research and Housing Support, and Steve DeLila, Individual and Family Support Program Director. We submitted written testimony about our programs and the support of the adjustments that the governor is making in the budget. I just want to highlight a few things. On the individual and family support programs, we administer 8,900 vouchers. This is federal vouchers and 6,373 wraps. The adjustments will maintain those number of wraps. In addition to that, the adjustment also cites a increase for funding to provide support to youth. And this is basically an expansion of the Head Start on Housing. For those that you know that program, it was to provide immediate relief to families that were facing housing insecurity and being able to avoid being homeless. And we will be expand that with the Department of Education, working in collaboration as we work with the Office of Early Childhood on the Head Start on Housing. On our production side, we have this past year, we completed 30 projects, 1,616 units around the state, and we have another 6,500 units under construction. 80% of those units are affordable to our families that are with incomes below 50% of the area median income. This adjustment also supports the expansion, basically to increase the production that we have on housing. As you all know, we have many challenges in trying to meet the needs of our most vulnerable population. And then on the homeless support system also, we administer about $45 million working with our service providers and partners to continue the work. This is a combination of state funding as well as federal resources. And then in addition to that, on the expansion of the production, with the new bill, the housing growth plan, we will continue providing technical assistance to our municipalities, not only technical assistance, but also financial assistance so that we can incentivize more housing development in, especially in our small towns. I'm going to stop there and we're open to any questions with my staff also supporting some of that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to start off with, first, I saw that the governor gave you guys $500,000 for a homeless youth program, a homeless youth program. Can you tell me where is this money going and how will it be managed?
Yes, so as I mentioned, that will be to the expansion of the Head Start on housing, as we saw that we were able to resolve many issues with families immediately so that they don't have to enter the homeless system. So the Head Start on housing provides a rental assistance voucher immediately when a family is about to lose their homes, but only for those kids that are in Head Start. This expands to kids that are in the school systems. Working with the McKinney-Vento and the Department of Education, these resources will help us to provide the case management for the families. Sometimes rental assistance is not the only issue that the family have, but also to connect them with the services that they need at the time of their looking for a new place to stay, and also if they need to find other services to support their success.
Okay, but this says for homeless youth, so it wouldn't be going through the families. I'm confused because
And it's called youth because it addresses the school system. So kids that are not in Head Start, first grade up to 12th grade.
so it really isn't going to youth, it's going to families.
We will identify youth in the school systems that are homeless with their families. So usually kids in the school systems, they do have parents.
We have kids that are in the school system that are not living with their parents. That's what McKinney-Vento has pointed out from their surveys and things like that. So I need to understand how this is going to be utilized, because we seem to sometimes send money into the Department of Housing, and it doesn't always seem to get distributed right away. So we want to make sure, because we know we have a real need. So I'd like to know what is the path, or how are you going to do the distribution, or how are you going to identify the homeless children? Are you going to be soliciting all the school boards? Or are you going, how are you going to?
I'm going to ask if Steve has been working with my other staff. Hey, Steve, are you there?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Steve DeLello, Director of Individual Family Support at DOH. And we do have relationships with the State Department of Education. We want to set up collaborations with probably the largest McKinney-Vento programs, obviously more of the cities, Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, to really identify those families that do have the youth that are participating in those McKinney-Vento services, and try to identify how we can help as many of those with the vouchers that were provided in last year's budget to add to this. So that way we can at least serve maybe 50 or so families.
So if I'm a kid in Hill House High School, and my teacher knows that I'm really sleeping in couch to couch or some other places like that, then my name would be referred to you? And
I think we would work with the McKinney-Vento liaisons within the individual school district. So if the teacher knows who that individual is, I would recommend that they connect them with a McKinney-Vento liaison within that school or within that district, so that we can come up with a list of individuals or families that would be eligible for the program. Because there are McKinney-Vento liaisons within each district.
yeah, I've worked with those
Sure.
before, but that doesn't make me feel comfortable.
Okay.
Because I guess the other question I have is that are they able to actually get use of a RAP? Because RAP doesn't have to go to an adult?
So it would be for the household, yes. If you're an emancipated minor, we
Yeah.
might be able to do something depending on the age of the individual in that case. But I think the intent here is to work with those who are in households for the most part, yes.
I think okay, so let me ask about the family RAPs.
Sure.
Do we have a waiting list?
For which particular?
The RAPs.
So, well, RAP is a really interesting program because when you look at it, it has a wide variety of programs that it assists. So, for example, we have the traditional RAP, which is for individuals like Section 8. It's a waitlist-driven program, but that is probably only about 20% of the entire population of RAP. You look at other programs such as homeless services programs, which are dedicated to that population, where those referrals will come from the coordinated entry networks. We have a wide variety of RAPs for the money follows the person, about 1,500 or so, and those referrals will come directly from Department of Social Services for individuals that are exiting nursing homes. We also have a great collaboration with the Department of Children and Families for family reunification. So for those households, those referrals would come directly from DCF. And we've also started working with Department of Developmental Disabilities so that they also have referral for their programs. So when you look at what you're talking about, which is the traditional RAP program, which is mimic Section 8, that is also about 1,500 or about 20% of our overall total, with the rest going to those specialty programs. So when you look at that, yes, there is a wait list for those programs. We have approximately 2,000 or so people on that wait list. But most of the investments that have been made recently have been for these specialty populations.
So you do, it says in your testimony that you have 6,300 wraps.
That's correct.
So those wraps are utilized by the multitude of people that you just identified.
That's correct.
So there are people that are on the wait list for the multitude of programs that you have right now.
Generally, how the wait list works, it would go for that subset, which mimics Section 8. Whereas if you were trying to get a wrap from the homeless service system, you would go through that process. Like I said, with DCF, if you were involved in the DCF system and they believe that you are a good match for family reunification, they would submit that application for the program. Same with DDS and Money Follows the Person. So it depends on which subset of the wrap program that you're in, which would determine where the referral process is coming from.
If I go for wraps, is a requirement for wraps that you have children in your family?
It's not a requirement for wraps.
It's not a requirement, okay, all right. So, but you do have probably a lot of people with families that
That's
have
correct.
children. So I would think that the money would be better spent putting it into the regular wrap as opposed to isolating it into children, because the children really can't use the wraps. You have to get a family. So we'd be right back to where we started from, trying to get a wrap for a family that have children.
For the 500,000 that you were referring to in the governor's budget?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think what is there is the 500,000 is to go for services to support vouchers within the Head Start on Housing program that were authorized during the last session that would take effect in fiscal year 27. So there's approximately 250 wraps that were authorized to start on July 1st. So this 500,000 would help match services for the McKinney-Vento population, the SDE population, for approximately 50 households.
So, okay. Questions? Yeah, Representative Nuccio.
This is, I'm gonna ask something that Tony forgot to ask. That's not a question. Can you just bring a list of those 6,300 wraps? You just rattled off like 5 or 6 different,
Yes.
like, can you bring that breakdown?
Yes,
and
we can.
what the waiting list is for each of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at, when we have the smaller group meeting, we will absolutely bring a list
Yes.
of the breakdown. We could share that. That is fine. Now, when you talk about a wait list, like the traditional Section 8 wait list where you apply via like a lottery, that would only apply for that bucket, which would be for the traditional wrap, about that 1,500. Those other special programmatic programs, they would receive referrals from whichever was dedicated by the legislature. So if it was from homelessness, it wouldn't necessarily be a wait list per se. It would come from the Coordinated Access Networks by name list. For the Money Follows the Person, the DSS would be the ones providing the referrals for eligible households that are in nursing homes that can live independently. So if you're talking about a true wait list, that only would apply for that about approximate 20% of households that are in the traditional wrap program.
Yeah, I think a visual
Yeah,
of all
I
of this
totally agree
would
with you,
be-
because then I could point to it and then show you
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it
I
comes
think,
from.
you know,
100%, I agree.
I think it's weird, like, Tony, I don't know if you agree or not, but I think it's weird that the wraps are wrapped into housing and homelessness services, because that number, that line item number that you have there, for all of housing and homelessness services, you're talking about $124 million. It's a pretty, like, to be able to kind of break out what's actually in there.
Sure.
Which is something that I've been asking everybody when they come to the work group meetings, like your SIDS, you have a bunch of different SIDS here. If you can bring like a high level description of what each of these programs are,
Sure.
what they, who they're servicing, that's where that grid would be good.
Yeah.
And then like what your metrics are for that, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
But my question is in regard to the fiscal monitoring. Typically we hear all the time, right? It's cheaper for us to contract out, like to have somebody, a nonprofit or something, do services. But it looks like we're actually pulling in 6 headcount to contract the function, the fiscal monitoring. And I know what you see here is the PS doesn't have the benefits, so it's actually probably pretty comparable or higher, because it's usually about 100% fiscal. I mean the benefits amount is pretty much the same amount as this PS. Can you just talk a little bit about why you're pulling that back in, and what's the rationale for that there?
Sure, I'll turn that over to our CFO, who can talk about the fiscal side of the shop.
Yes. So Good afternoon. My name is Melvin, CFO for the OH. Thank you for the question.
Can you move
So-
a little closer to the microphone so that we can?
Y'all scooch down.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank
Is that better?
That is
Yeah.
better, yes.
Absolutely, Rich. Yes, so I would say thank you for the question. My name is Melvin Castillo, CFO for the OH. So we recently officially became a standalone agency back in 2023 when I joined the agency, and we also established our own business office within that department. We went through an extensive analysis. We identified that these services were being provided by a nonprofit organization for the last 10 plus years. In addition to that, we recently just did an RFP, and the monitoring piece was left out intentionally because we wanted to bring that in. The reason for that is because we have findings that go back more than 10 years, and we cannot eliminate those findings because those are the nature that take place when those physical monitoring, and the nonprofit organization cannot fulfill that requirement. So we decided that it's best if we can bring the service in-house. Now that we have a business office, we can handle it, and I think we can do a better job at a much more cost-effective and also more efficiency and accuracy, and at the same time, giving us more control over the program, internal controls, and so on and so forth. So that's why the decision was made. We looked into it, and we determined that it's best if we bring that service in-house rather than outsourcing it.
Okay, thank you. That's good information to have.
You're welcome.
And I think I'm good for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representative Kavras DeGraw.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. To stay on that topic, I'm not aware that this ever existed at a nonprofit, especially at CCEH. So I'm a little confused why it's being brought in-house when it never existed outside of house.
So you're confused as to why we're bringing it in?
No, I'm confused that it ever existed at a nonprofit.
Oh, no, it was in there. We have the document, and we can show you, we had a contract that monitoring was part of that.
That's very confusing because my understanding is that CCH has provided training with the Department of Housing, but that this actual specific piece, they never did any kind of fiscal monitoring for.
And that's where the findings were there, because it was never being done. I mean, it was part of it, but it was never being fulfilled.
Okay, I was under the impression that they were never asked to do that, so that's why it's very confusing.
Well, it was part of the contract, so I'm assuming there's a contract, they have to fulfill it, correct?
So you have the physical contract that asked them to do that?
Yes, it was part of that, yes.
Okay, you can bring that to the working group?
Absolutely,
Okay.
no problem.
And we did get the various grants and things that maybe might be
Nope, I
cut
didn't
as
ask.
well? Oh, we didn't, so if you could bring also a list of what various grants are being cut by 20% to the working group, that would be helpful as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative Dillon?
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on the concerns about the homeless youth. We've had, and mentioned this in committee a few weeks ago, we had a loss of residential services in the area where I live, and one of which was for foster kids, and one youth continuum. I spoke to the person who's in the process of closing that. I guess what I'm concerned about is I want to keep the focus on the kids, and I want to get a not today, but get a picture of what kind of group you're looking at, and I want to make sure, because we're losing services, that we're not duplicating them at the same time that we're losing them. I mean, we're having absenteeism with teachers in our system too, and so I want to make sure that we have the capacity in some areas where, and maybe our experience is not universal, and maybe everybody else is just hunky-dory. I don't know that. I don't think so. I want to get a picture from you for the work group of how this partnership is going to work, and what kind of young people you see as being potentially the, I guess you would say, the target population.
Sure, we'd be happy to have that discussion and bring some notes, and we can give you more information too about Youth Continuum and the programs that Department of Housing has funded. Any of our federal dollars, we have recontracted out to other providers in the New Haven community. So we're trying to uphold as much services as we did previously before you continue closed.
Well, I think, and the commissioner did a great job intervening to save some supportive housing for adults. But since we've all spoken, Solar Youth is closed. The Orchids which is foster children, merged with no notice with another nonprofit. I don't know the status of the bonding that not housing, but another agency still has in hand, I think. And then there's Youth Continuum, where I spoke with the person who's involved, and I see a deterioration, and I'm concerned about it, and I want to know what we can do that's right, and it may be that we're an outlier in our region. I don't know that, but I want to make sure that we know what you intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Daryoski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner and the Department of Housing, for coming today. My questions are related in regards to your expansion. If you could bring to the working group through you, Madam Chair, the 6 positions you are adding to your department and what they will be doing. I know it's in regards to HB 8002 of 2025, so if you could just provide a little bit more information on that. And then to circle back to kind of the providing for funding to support homeless youth services, I'm looking in the governor's budget book that we've been provided, and I've looked through documents you've provided to the committee. It says $500,000 for homeless youth, but it's not reflected in the homeless youth budget line, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out if it's in /housing/homeless services and kind of where the breakdown is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, we will look for that and get clarification for what actual line item that would go into.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I kind of want to understand a little bit the difference between a RAP voucher and a, what's the other one? Section 8.
Sure. So Section 8 is funded by the federal government, the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development.
It's just funding, basically?
Yep. And then RAP is a program that is almost identical. There are a couple minor differences, but it's funded by the state and by the legislature and the governor.
Okay, so do we issue RAPs to people who qualify every year, or we just give them one, and same thing with Section 8, or do?
Sure. Once somebody receives a voucher, it is their voucher until they are no longer eligible, which can be a wide variety of things. It could be they become over income, which is great, which we all strive for. If they get additional income, they would move off because they no longer meet the eligibility criteria. There can also be negative reasons. Somebody may be evicted and they would lose their voucher for that. So basically, once they gain that voucher, it is theirs until they're no longer part of the program.
If I have a voucher and I rent an apartment and my landlord has not given us adequate heat, the heat is not working.
Sure.
And so they're asking for rent, but I don't have any heat. What happens?
So all units are inspected before an individual goes into the program. If forever a instance like this occurs, that heat no longer is being provided and it is not being rectified by the landlord in a timely fashion, the individual can call our provider who administers the program on our behalf, let us know of that. We would do an immediate inspection. That is considered a 24-hour. It has to be fixed immediately. If it is not, the rent is abated. We will not pay for that unit until the heat is fixed. And then clearly, if there is continuing issues with that, we would look to resolve the issue with that household, whether it is providing access to another place to make sure that they have safety and warmth in this.
Could you send the committee the description of how you qualify for a RAP and how you qualify for Section 8?
Sure. The basic criteria are the same, which is just you have to be at or below 50% of the area median income. So that's the main.
The area median income right now is what, 79,000?
So we would, obviously for our program, we would use the state average. So we can bring that number, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we can bring that number to the group committee meeting as well. But if you're looking at like a housing authority in Norwalk, they may have a little different because Fairfield County is going to be a little bit higher because of the average.
Do you oversee Section 8 as well as RAP?
We oversee the Section 8 program that the Department of Housing receives directly from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we are just one housing authority amongst a wide variety throughout the state. So from your area, Elm City Communities is a housing authority,
Right.
so they get their funds directly from HUD. DOH at the state level has absolutely no oversight over them. That is their relationship directly with HUD. So we are, in this instance, like a peer of Elm City Communities in that we also receive money from Department of Housing and Urban Development to manage our program. Difference is theirs, they have to use in the city of New Haven. We at the state, we can use our vouchers throughout the entire state.
Okay. Affordable housing is a big issue now.
Sure.
Things go up, prices go up.
Yes.
Does the voucher reflect that
Yes.
over a year's time?
Yes, it does. So every year, we have two different rates. We have, for Section 8, we follow what's called the fair market rent. That is what is provided to us by HUD, and we go by it, and you'll see every year those numbers increase. On the off year, it's happened only twice since I've been in this business, it's actually decreased during poor economic times, but clearly, the past 5 years, it has rocketed up because we've seen great increases. Same thing with the state RAP program. We have something called the maximum allowable rent, where we look at overall rental rates around the state and come up with the numbers that are appropriate for that particular region. So it is flexible. It does move up. So it's not like we're putting somebody with a $400 voucher that and rents are $2,000. We try to keep up as best as we can with the market.
Okay. So you got your laundry list of things that you are good. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Senator?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to first of all recognize the stellar group from DOH who are with us today. And I guess this is a general question. So is the commissioner going to be with us for our subcommittee meetings? I don't know if we're starting a trend here or not, but yeah. She is going to be.
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Yes, I will be.
Yeah, okay, we'll be anticipating that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If I could just one question.
Yes, Senator?
One quick question. There are a number of programs that we've been working on for funding. In particular, the Montville Housing Authority. Do you know where we are on the Montville Housing Authority? And are we going to finally, after several years, going to get that constructed?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for that question. And we actually have an update that we were going to bring to you on Monday. But Michael, you have the latest from CHFA.
Yes, Commissioner. Representative Walker, Senator Austin, thank you. Mike Santoro, Director of Policy Research and Housing Support. We met with the staff at CHFA yesterday. Montville was on the list we discussed. I believe bids are out for, and we're talking about Independence and Freedom Village.
Yep.
Bids are out on Independence. We expect, if I remember correctly, I think the bids are due back the first week of March. That will then get us locked in, and we'll actually get that underway. Freedom Village, which is the lead in the water issue, we have engaged Eagle Environmental to do full level testing to better identify where the source is. But we are at the point where we're looking at two very specific options. One, what is the cost associated with hooking the property up to the public water supply? We understand there may be ability to access that, or fully replace the well and all of the systems leading to the buildings. We're evaluating that in conjunction again with Eagle Environmental. We should have some recommendations in the next 30 days or so, assuming they can actually get in and do the necessary testing due to the weather. But we are prioritizing that. Again, we are not looking at a piecemeal. We want to solve that lead issue one time at whatever, I don't want to say whatever the cost, but cost will not be a deciding factor on how we solve the problem.
Oh, thank you. Representative Nuccio.
I'm sorry, I forgot. I have one other question. I'm dealing with an issue currently in my town regarding affordable senior housing. And one of the things that has come up is the income tax credit for investors who invest in helping to create affordable senior housing options. Basically, the partnership between, like, in my case, it would be Access Network and one of the main funders of it. It's like a partnership plan. I'm going to be reaching out to you regarding that because I'd like to understand how this program works and if we're seeing problems throughout other senior housing agents. My question is if these senior housing units don't have enough revenue to continue to function, and they definitely don't have revenue or access to reserves to be able to do major projects that are causing health issues, and they go under, what's the plan for that?
Thank you, Representative Nuccio. We should connect offline to get details on the project. It depends on who the funder was as to what the options may be available. So look forward. I believe you have my email. Please email me directly. We can talk about that specific project, that specific deal, and see how we can help.
And in general,
Commissioner?
in general, Representative, we are trying to preserve, we're not trying, our goal is also to preserve the housing that we have. And we have worked with several, especially the housing authorities where they are serving the elderly, and we have restructured their deals, and we have put a little more subsidies so that they can continue providing those units at the level that the residents need. So any development that housing authorities manages and they need to be restructured, please let them know that they can come to talk to us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll be reaching out on that. I think my broader issue is, though, are we seeing this kind of a thing? And I'd like to talk about that. And more than, like, I know it's happening in Tolland, right? I know it's happening there. I know I've had issues also in Wellington. But my concern is if this is happening broad scope with senior affordable housing, you know, we're kind of painting ourselves into a really, really bad corner. And I think maybe we need to look at that model and the funding. Like, how do we get funding to fix these buildings and stuff like that? So any information that you have, I think, would be extremely useful.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is the Department of Labor, Commissioner Bartolomeo et al. Yeah, I know, and that, I already did it. But now we have to go online on the bills and approve each bill. No, we're not done yet. Okay, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
How are you? If you want to give us, Commissioner, a couple of minutes of overview, not your full testimony, and then we'll get right into questions.
Well, thank you very much. It's very nice to be here and to see all of you. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today in support of Governor Lamont's budget, but also the ability to highlight Connecticut's unemployment insurance program and the challenges that we're facing administering this critical safety net program. It's not always realized to be a safety net, but we believe strongly that it is. Our federal partners have consistently reduced the UI program support, and insufficient funding and the volatility of the unexpected federal clawbacks have put a really significant financial pressure on all state labor agencies, including Connecticut Department of Labor. Nationally, the UI program has consistently been underfunded, which is why Connecticut did not have a call center going into the pandemic. On top of that, that structural problem, we recently had our unemployment insurance funding reduced and clawed back by $9.8 million, and that is in less than 1 year from today. I'm here today with Deputy Commissioner Daryl Dudinsky, who oversees the UI program, and our CFO, Chris Levine, and we are really happy to be here and to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Thank you. So I'm not going to ask you any unemployment questions.
Guys got all excited.
I'm going to go to some other
Got
things.
all excited.
No, I'm not going to do that. A couple things. We have the Connecticut's Youth Employment Program, Summer Youth Employment Program, has, there is a formula that would actually address this issue, and the policy in Connecticut is that if one of the WIBs says no, then it's no for everybody. That seems to me to be ineffective because the area that it's hurting the most for funding is Eastern Connecticut. That means that while we have a growing number of youth that can use this system, and this year would be a perfect year to do because it's not going to be a loss for other people relative to real dollars, but it will stabilize the system. So I just want to say that we do have a concept in on this issue. I disagree with one WIB who's getting more money than they would get by a formula, getting to say to the other WIB, sorry, your circumstances have changed, but you can't get anything there.
So thank you for that question, and actually I've brought up Deputy Commissioner Mark Plazella as well. I'll start, and if he feels he needs to help me, then he can jump in. This is a problem that we've been having for a couple of years, and Department of Labor, we genuinely believe that formula needs to be changed. It has been static, and it was based upon information that is no longer relevant. And when it was put into statute, it was also done where there was a swapping of two regions' numbers, and then in an effort of just passing it, they left it alone. So it really is not at all representative of where the need is in the state, and we agree fully. Now, we actually tried to put in a bill ourselves a couple of years ago. The problem became that the reason, well, how should I put this? The reason that I have said I will do this when you all can agree is because right now, from our perspective, all this money is going out to Connecticut youth, and I don't feel that Department of Labor should be in a position where we're picking winners and losers. So I have asked the boards to come up with something, and we have spent, our WIOA director has spent hours and hours and hours with them. Mark and our team, we have tried to work this through for 2 years. Last year, one of the boards did an end round around the others and us and engaged legislative support to kind of undo what we were doing. So I said, look, not our fight, work this out. We agree, we support. We've run all the numbers, done all the research. We've provided them all the administrative support to understand how to work these formulas, and we're ready to do it. I even said it can go right up to the day before session. The governor's office was allowing me to put in a bill that late, where normally we have to have our bills by October, and they couldn't come together on it. We are prepared, ready, and working with them to put something in next year because they finally, in February, have said, okay, we're all on board, but we've tried to encourage and push this along. We told them immediately after last session to work on it, and so that's, I am deferring completely respectfully. If the legislature is wanting to do something now, we've run the numbers, we've done all of that, but to have one board do an end round around all the rest of us was a point where I said, we're not picking winners and losers, we're here for the whole state.
Right, but right now there are winners and losers in not having a formula.
And we can provide you with all of the data and
That
all
would
of
be
the
great.
research we've done.
So just bring that to the working group.
Absolutely.
We're all set, sir. We're all set. I just want to stay on target right now. The other one is the manufacturing pipeline initiative. I've been talking with Electric Boat, who is not the only vendor where they get jobs out of the manufacturing pipeline, which is for the Eastern Workforce Investment Board uses this, but this program is impacting schools all over the state of Connecticut. They just happen to be the administrator of these right now. They're going to need another $2 million. Electric Boat is running cohorts on welding and electric work, different kinds of welding, and a whole host of other classes that gets young people into jobs. I go to the manufacturing pipeline signing ceremonies. It's not just Electric Boat. It's we have 400 subcontractors that get helped out here. It's also Pratt and Sikorsky that get helped out with workers that get these job skills. And they're starting off at $60,000, $65,000, $70,000 a year with full benefit packages. It's really, really important for us to support this. And Electric Boat itself will see 7,000 workers every year for the next 3 years, 1,000 of which are relative to engineering. So I think that is important for us. I just want to give you an awareness of what's going on. With that, I happen to be going to the Electric Boat Legislative Breakfast, which is on Monday morning at some dark 30 time. And they just sent us a note saying snow, rain, or shine. So I'm assuming I'm traveling in the snow. But thank you for that. I know that other people have questions, and I don't mean to rapid fire you at this, but here we go. Representative Walker.
Thank you.
Good program, support it.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at, okay, there's a lot here. So it says, one of them is remove funding for apprenticeship program oversight and integrity program, council. I don't see it listed here on your budget summary.
Right, that was something that last year came up in the budget, was entered into the budget as a legislative priority. The proponent of that funding I did have a conversation with, and I had expected it would have been removed after we had that conversation, but it ended up in the budget, although there was no legislation to go along with it for implementing legislation. It is not something that we supported, wanted, asked for, or needed, and it's not something that there was any enacting legislation associated with. So that is something that the governor's budget is removing. It is not an active program or council or
Well, it didn't
anything.
come to fruition, it just didn't happen, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. On the different various grants, they're all over the place. I mean, the amount of money, let me see, I saw domestic workers training program, and then there's 694,000 in other programs. I don't see those numbers again on the budget sheet, so I'm assuming they're somewhere else. I think that they should have been. This is very interesting. I just like to get a list of them because there are a lot of programs that I know legislators put in. I'm not arguing about it. I think that's good, but I don't understand how the choices were made for which ones paid 20% and which didn't. Because a lot of your labor programs are done by legislators. And,
Right.
So it's, and I kind of resent the fact that programs that we do get a 20% cut, but.
I think I can explain what OPM did on that.
Oh, what'd they do?
There were multiple grants over the years that legislators have added to our budget, but rather than adding them for their own line item, like most of these others are like the MPI and those kinds of things, they put them into our OE. So it beefed up our OE to inflate it in a way that looked like we had more discretionary funding than we did. And especially right now with our current finances, that's troubling for folks to think we have an extra $3 million that we don't have. So they were pulled out. My understanding is that statewide, when grants were pulled out of OE in that manner, there was a 20% reduction. So it appears that those that were in our line items were not consistently that same methodology.
Very good. Okay, I got that. Okay. So I just want to go back to the summer youth employment. What was the formula? Is there a formula for this?
I'm going to have Mark explain that. It was based on free and reduced lunch once upon a time, random cities.
Really?
Hi, yeah, good afternoon, Representative Walker. Yeah, so the formula that's in that statute was created, I believe, back in 2007. And it was, as Commissioner pointed out, based on free and reduced lunch populations in the major cities. So it only took into account the 5 major cities, Hartford, Waterbury, Bridgeport, New London, and New Haven. And so, as Commissioner pointed out, we have been looking at this for the last couple of years because we know populations have changed.
Right.
We know that there's other factors that we should be taking into consideration. And truth be told, our director of WIOA was looking at the formula that's used to provide youth programming dollars to the workforce development boards and thought we might want to closely align it to that. So it looks very similar in nature, and it recognizes changes and shifts
Okay.
in population data.
So WIOA does that have a funding formula for youth?
It does for distribution to the workforce development boards, yes.
We did find that we can't do it directly that way because then it would have excluded 14 and 15-year-olds that we didn't want to do. So we put a lot into trying to figure out an appropriate formula, and we're ready to go when everybody else is.
Okay, no, I decided, when I heard this was a big problem. I never knew that we had a formula, so thank you, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair, okay, I'm done.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you. I agree. I've also talking to, the EWIB board and stuff like that, and, if there's anything that I can do to help, I think we need to adjust that formula so it's equivalent, because I know I'd gone back and talked, especially in the rural areas, right, there was nothing for our kids. But, so trying to figure out how to make this equitable across the board, I think, is definitely something that we need to do. One of the things that I've been asking everybody is all of your different line items in here, you have a lot of different SIDS and programs. If you could please bring to the work group a high level of what all of these programs are, who they serve, and what metrics that you use to look at them to see, success measures. And then secondly, you have in here that provide the funding to offset declining federal support for unemployment. It's just personnel services, no people, right? So does this have to do, can you talk a little bit about, is this we're getting less, funding? How does it work? What is this money? And it's ongoing, I'm assuming, right? So we want to make sure we're understanding it's not a one-time thing.
Right. Okay, so what happens is that when Congress appropriates a certain amount of money to the different agencies like USDOL, it's not necessarily what USDOL needs, right? It's what the Congress has to split up.
Right.
USDOL has something called an RJM formula, which I put in here, resource justification model. I have to just really emphasize that the funding we get is not based on the unemployment rate. That is a very, very common, understandable, but common misconception. We get funding based on the amount of work we do. It's kind of like a widgets and gadgets thing. So how many times and where we're having to put work into a claim. Some are very complicated. They can stay around for 6 to 8 years. Others are, out the door. So they base our funding on that. But they look at the whole pot. They have every year the state agencies put in what was our workload. They look at that and predict based on economic factors, well, what's the agency's workload going to be next year and the year after? So it's very roughly estimated. And then they give us a notice of award for what's called our base grant. That is for administration. That is our people, right? They give us an award in August, September. It starts the federal fiscal year in October. The last 2 years, in February and March, they said, that amount we gave you? Well, we're sequestering, we're reducing it. We're already halfway through the federal fiscal year, and they take 5.5%, or, I put the percents in here. Yep. And so then all of a sudden, we end up halfway through, can't budget for those adjustments, and we end up. So in the last 2 fiscal years, which we're in one of them now, so we've only known about all of this for 10 months, was a combination that resulted in $9.8 million reduction in our administrative base grant. Now, there's another funding stream that when we do more work than they predicted, they will give us what's called an above base to account for that. Well, the last few years, the above base that we've already done the work, and now we're supposed to get kind of reimbursed, they've only paid between 0 and 60 cents on the dollar. We've already done it. So then the other thing that we comes into this, so the I said something wrong. $7.5 million is how much the reduction in the base grants was. But then there was 3 grants that we had gotten because we knew ARPA was ending, and we knew we needed to, so we went after these competitive grants. 3 of them we got with ARPA funding and in preparation, because we could also use them for staff. Last March, they said, we're cutting them as of the night before. Send us back every dollar you haven't used. That was another 2.3. So that's where my 9.8 comes. So, you know, since last February, we've been reduced $9.8 million in our federal funding for staff, for administration. That's on top of a system that hasn't funded us properly. If you notice nationally, 16% underfunded for departments of labor for the UI program. That's why we didn't even have a call center going into the pandemic, because for years we hadn't gotten enough money to sustain that. So that's what brings us to the point where we are, that the call center costs us $10 million a year to run. And the feds are not paying for that.
So it's been constant kind of underfunding. Okay, so if I'm understanding this, then this is basically money that you would have gotten as a revenue to offset your PS cost that you're not getting anymore.
It would have been the only way we've been paying UI staff until recently is with federal funds. So only way. So since 2023, we had some state assistance, and we have 50 positions that are paid for by state funding today. That's about a third of the cost of the call center. But historically, our state has not had to contribute. It's been federally funded. Every state in the nation has a very different formula.
Okay, so it was fully funded by the federal government before.
Yes.
Even with the reductions.
Yes.
Now we're saying they're not going to fully fund it anymore, and that's been happening for several years now, it's 2023 forward, and ARPA money is gone, so now we have to kind of kick in the funding that we're not getting at the federal level.
Yes. So the 19 million deficit that you see in 2027 is based upon my current service level.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you very much. I just want to understand the history, that it's not now, it's been going on for a while now.
Yeah, and actually in this last year, many states have engaged in layoffs for their UI part of their agency. Unfortunately, we have not done that.
How are we doing though from like a unemployment level? Like, do we think we need to maintain the level of staff that we have? Is it going to fluctuate? Do we see higher or lower? I've been starting to hear about a lot of layoffs, like all over the place.
Right. So what we've done is we've engaged in what I call a deficit mitigation plan, because I cannot get to 2027 and have that deficit, right? So we've since October had a very hard policy. I'm not backfilling positions. So we're down 20 typically would have been federally funded positions, but we're not getting the money, so I've not been able to backfill through attrition. So this is why it's important for us to bring this to your attention now, because with our current staffing levels, the call center wait time has gotten, in our peak period a couple weeks ago, got up to 3 to 4 weeks before anybody could get a call back. And our adjudications also impacted, has a 5 to 6 week wait even today. If your claim has to be adjudicated before it can be paid, you have to go through that pathway. So, you know, that's where our current service levels are, and that's where the 19 million deficit, if we were to fill that hole, would get us to today's level.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Hartley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Commissioner and team. Thanks for being with us. So this is a grim conversation with regard to the UI, and you know our unemployment rates presently have been very steady and sound, and we've prided ourselves on that. However, you know, there is such volatility going on all fronts that, again, we've got to brace ourselves because we don't know what's coming. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, and if you want to talk more about it when we get to subcommittee, is about what we're anticipating with the advent of AI in the employment sector. It's going to be in many instances, you know, very beneficial, but it is also going to be very disruptive. And I guess I'm trying to get my arms around it from the economic side of it, what to anticipate so we can be in front of this wave as opposed to being taken under by it. So I'm just wondering from the department, Madam Commissioner, how you are preparing or trying to measure or get our arms around this.
So I think there's two sides to that question, Senator, and thank you for that. So one is the work that we do with in the American Job Centers and helping folks who are job seekers and, trying to keep up with what we need to be able to learn so we can teach, so we can assist job seekers. The other, I guess there's actually three sides to this. The other piece is what will happen to the unemployment rate. That's something that, I just don't even know how one figures that out, quite frankly. And unfortunately, federally, the BLS has been, almost defunded. So that's a hard one to kind of predict. What I can talk about is in our agency and the work that we're doing. I have to say that I have just been so incredibly pleased with the new Secretary Wojcik. I have met with him 6 times, which is unheard of, about our staffing situation, our federal funding cuts, but also what can we do to keep the level staffing we have right now, but also improve on the other end those customer service wait times. What we are looking at will not mean less staff, but I want to be able to retain the staff I have right now and also not have somebody have to wait, 3-4 weeks for the call center or 6 weeks for adjudications. So we're exploring with him ways and opportunities that we might be able to bring on some technology supports for our staff. For instance, the call center right now, we have our reemployee CT system for unemployment claims, and we have our call center, and they're not connected. So we're working on a plan to try to connect them. Therefore, when somebody calls the call center, I currently have a bot on there, but that bot can only answer general questions. We want to get to the way that we can have that go into your claim, answer your questions, and maybe you then don't need to wait on the phone or schedule a call back, right? So there's that. And then for adjudications, there's also AI that can help not replace our adjudicators. There's a lot of reasons we can't legally. They need to have a manual decision, all that kind of stuff. But AI can gather information from claimants and from employers and compare and contrast and then, prepare that information for the adjudicator so they're not spending as much time on every claim. We have we're doing extensive work on that, and we are working on our own 3-year strategic plan on how to better utilize technology to support our staff and improve our customer service.
Yeah, and the here and now is we got a $2 million line item here on the UI, and you've got a projected 19 million. So the technology is not there yet, and we might get some relief there, but we still have this monumental problem in front of us.
Can I mention something to that, ma'am?
Yeah.
The point too is that it's the same staff right now, same staff who have to do what we call the business, the production and the claim work and support and supervise. Those same folks are the experts, and they need to also be involved with the technology piece because they have to help, even if it were a vendor or if it's bits. Those same experts have to be the ones to look at the requirements for the technology and do the testing. So I've got these people trying to do both ends of it at the same time with minimal staffing.
Yeah, clearly being pulled in a lot of different directions. Let me just shift gears for a moment, if I might, on the WIBs. So is there something that delineates the geographic boundaries of a WIB? Because I've got to tell you, I'm very confused. And so I'm the Northwest, and I have all these other WIBs in, pretty close proximity to the core city. So I'm very confused.
Yes, I understand, and in the last few years, there have been some of the boards that are doing statewide programming. So I'm going to
Why?
defer to Mark Pizzella, Deputy, as the expert in WIOA.
Thank you, Senator Hartley, for that question. So, under WIOA, well, previously under Workforce Investment Act, which turned into WIOA, there are designated local workforce areas, and that is established going back in historical times. So, the WIBs Workforce Development Boards, as their areas are structured now, was based on that historical perspective, and so that's what we have right now in terms of how they're structured. They're very closely aligned with the county structure, but not quite as, they're not one for one in terms of the county structure.
Okay, so then how does it happen that I've got all these pop-ups,
When you say pop-ups,
other WIBs?
Well, we're going to tag team on this
Yes.
one. So there's an effort afoot to, and I think this is a question for the Governor's Workforce Council as well, because to try to have an area or a region who has a certain workforce occupational expertise, let's say, take on a program and then do that kind of statewide. So I think there's been conversations that have been about, expanding beyond just those areas. And I think that's what we're seeing at times. But traditionally, each board would only service clients within their region. And that's what
yeah, and I think so. That's the key word. I think is traditionally within their regions, but there is no residential requirement for a board to serve somebody. So federal dollars are not constrained by the Workforce Development Board area. So in other words, folks could go to another region. So folks from Bridgeport, if they wanted to get serviced in Waterbury, they could. There's no residential restriction on that.
I'm not referring to the clients actually going, and I appreciate that. No, I'm referring to the entity and the organization, setting up shop in, across the traditional boundaries, if you will. The intention is not to be competing. I get the feeling that there's duplication when we're doing that. I understand the regional partner sector program, and that's a little different. Okay, we're focusing on a trade, a skill, whatever. But the actual core programs seem to be morphing, into a lot of different over their traditional boundaries, and I think we've got to have some clarity about that. And I would like to know, when we get into the work group, how do we kind of clean that up?
So I do think, out of respect, I need to defer a bit to my colleague, Kelly Valeries, as the Chief Workforce Officer, because she's also, the Vice Chair of the Governor's Workforce Council. When that office was established, there were some changes that were made, and so there is a lot of kind of authority, if you will, of that entity over the workforce development boards that CTDOL no longer has or is really part of.
And I would also add that the 5 regional workforce development boards have their own council. It's the Connecticut Workforce Development Board Council, of which the five boards do get together and have conversations with one another. I think part of what we have seen over the past few decades is that there's lots of different opportunities for the boards to get funding, and sometimes that funding requires them to do certain things outside of their local area and designated area. So I do know that they work primarily together to try to alleviate those concerns when it comes to the competitiveness and support one another.
So this is a conversation I'd like to get into a little bit more next round, if we could. Thanks very much. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Cavros DeGraw.
Thank you so much, and wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I guess we're almost at evening, but it's still afternoon. It's like being in the casino.
Except the air's not as good.
Right, yeah, that's definitely true. Obviously there are a lot of moving parts. I just wanted to get a sense of, have there been changes since you had to prepare the sheets? Is there anything specific that you would want to call our attention to since you prepared these sheets? Because it sounds like you've had more attrition since May. I just want to get a sense if we're missing anything.
No, I actually have updated this.
Okay.
We, in the very beginning of February, and since I had spoken to you last, we did get another sequestration notice, which was rather frustrating because it was just after we saw that the governor's budget was going to support us with an additional $2.5 million for UI, and then the federal government noticed us within a couple days that they were going to not give us or reduce our allocation by another 2.7. So it was rather defeating.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that. Okay. And so on the information around the technology updates, and I think this sort of dovetails onto what Senator Hartley was asking, some of the chatbot stuff you were talking about, is that included in this $500,000? And then my sort of secondary part of that question is this the whole cost of, if it's vendor cost, what is that the entire cost?
No, so that particular amount, the 500,000, is in there because traditionally we have not received any funding from the state for any technology. We have a little bit of a different relationship with DAS IT optimization because we're 70% federally funded. So we didn't have any funding that went over to them, but we get billed for basically what they do. So we've not had anything. So I've put together in my request the amount of kind of licenses, subscriptions, things like that that we have to pay all the time that we get out of our federal grants, but we don't have state funding for, and we've been using our OE. Our OE has traditionally had a structural deficit of like $500,000 to $700,000 every year, and we have no other place to take, this type of UI support for technology funding. So that's how we, this budget, I'm very pleased, puts that in. That's not a result of our request for new projects. We are going to explore many different ways, like IT bonding and other things, for what we need to do to move us into the future and to support our staff through technology and improve our customer service. Those are in the phase right now of we are putting together information to create requests, and that's where the Secretary has been very helpful in encouraging us to go that path.
Okay. I have more questions, but I know other people do, so we'll bring those to the working group. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Dathan, followed by Representative Ackert.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for the discussion this morning. It was really lively, and most of my questions regarding have been addressed or are going to be coming to the working group. I did want to talk about two things. The first one being the audit report for DOL for 21 and 22. We're still going to be waiting for the 23 and 24, but there was a couple issues that were brought up, and I just wanted to know if you guys could bring to the working group an update on the key findings of the auditor for that report, and if we're going to be seeing those as repeat. There was some reporting issues that were concerning, and a number of delays in complaints being resolved, and the disaster recovery plan have not been, there was some issues with that in the old audit report, and just want to know where we are today on those things. My second question is around the number of appeals. How long are people waiting for appeals to be processed? Because I know we've had some delays with the cuts within the federal government, and just wanted to know if we have an update on that.
Yeah, so Representative, I would refer you to page 3, I think it is, of my testimony, and we have right there that the appeals right now are around 4,000, which the average life is about 118 days. The median is about 51 days. So that's where we are for appeals. What I would like to point out, though, is that even prior to appeals, you go through adjudications. So a claim first goes to adjudications, which right now has about a 5 to 6 week wait before it goes into appeals. So it's a 3-step process: adjudications, the first level of appeals, which is the referee section, and then the Board of Review, which is the upper level, before somebody can go to the courts.
Okay. I mean, I guess my concern with some of these technical reduction plans that you're looking at is going to cause some additional delay in getting those items resolved. And I guess if you can bring to the working group kind of highlighting with these pulling back of the technology software spending that you're doing, how that's going to affect that process going forward.
Through you, Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you clarify what you mean when you say technical reductions? Because we're talking about technology augmentation. I'm not
Well,
sure.
I was just looking at your federal reduction plan on page 2. You talk about pulling back and consolidating technology software and subscription spending, deferring reemploy CT technology upgrades and data migrations, and delaying user experience enhancements due to technology platforms. And I'm just trying to understand with those
You don't need
cuts,
to
what
answer
is,
that question now, just bring it to the work group.
yeah, bring it to the working group. I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
wasn't
because
clear. Yes,
we're
yeah.
we're a half hour over now, so I just.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Representative Ackert.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very quick. I was just looking at my document for other expenses, and the other expense line item coming out is, I believe is just 2.57 million, and going into then the various at 3.57.
Do you know what that is about?
Is my document incorrect, or?
Are you
Other
looking at
expense
the?
line, yeah, your other expense line item that I have being removed brings it down to the difference government's original is 2.570, being removed. Is that?
Well, but there's also a request by the governor's budget for 500,000 going in. So I don't know if that's the difference that you're talking about.
Mine is, so transfer legislative grants is separate account, which would be the various grants is 3.470 I have. But coming out is 2.57.
Okay.
I have a $900,000 difference in mine from coming out of OE into the 9.
Is that an OFA document?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get a hold of that and we'll come back with a response. I haven't seen that one.
Yep, and I only see, you only have 4 line items I see in the various grants. And are those being reduced 20%, or are they being held whole?
Those
Okay.
coming out of OE.
Yep.
There's a 20% hold.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
That was it, just wanted, and then, yeah, so those numbers would be great when you get them. Thank you.
Representative Reyes.
I don't have it in my document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, good to see you. You and I have had several conversations as sidebars, and I just wanted to bring it to light. So these shortfalls obviously have delivery ramifications, and it's hurting a lot of our constituents. And my question for you is, and you don't have to answer here, you could do it in the working group as well, but is there a region that's seeing a higher number of complaints or caseload, if you will, for unemployment, where you said people are taking up to 3 weeks to get a reply? My question for you is, can we rotate the labor to where the highest demand is? And if you're already doing that, please let us know.
Yeah, no, so there's no way to do that. What happens is that a call comes into the call center. If there's not, and sometimes there's an agent who might be in between calls, or somebody, they didn't show up for an appointment, and they can grab it right then. But during our peak season, which you've just experienced, they come in and they immediately go into a scheduler. And we have 3 different ways to schedule an appointment. One is when you call and you schedule, you could go online and schedule. I guess that's 2 ways to schedule. And then you could also submit an email, which will get fixed faster. So it's a first come, first serve. There's no way to differentiate the origin of that call. I think that answers your question. So no, I'm not able to say I'm going to give more call time to Bridgeport or Waterbury than I am to New Haven. No.
It's not available with you have the data, but it's not available with the technology you have.
If you're asking, do we have the data of where our filers live, then I believe we do. But if you're asking about getting service, it's all, goes into one call center system. And it's a first come, first serve picking appointments.
Thank you.
We
No.
had with ARPA funding, again, federal funding, we had 157 people on the call center. Today we have 88. So I promise you they're working as hard and fast as they can. But the reality is during peak time, it goes to 3 to 4 weeks for a callback.
And this shortfall that you've been talking about, I think I'm in and out because I'm in environment, but you said 9.8 mil? Is that where your shortfall is right now?
The direct federal reduction,
Yep.
it is 9.8 million.
Wow. Thank you, Commissioner. I'll continue my conversation in the session and offline. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Dillon, this is rapid fire. You've got about 2 seconds because we are going to shut this down.
You have my phone number, Representative Dillon.
Why, thank you. Could you please bring to the work group documentation of the reason for the $500,000 cut to the apprenticeship and program oversight council, and how your agency sees the role of apprenticeships going forward? Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't need to talk.
Hey,
Goodbye.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're going to see you at the work group. We got a lot going on. And we are going to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Commissioner Dykes, are you here? Okay, guys, I just want you to know we only have half an hour delta between the end of our agency briefings and the public hearing. So we are now going directly right up on top of that. So that means that Commissioner Bartolomeo is not even going to say hi to the Commissioner of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and she is headed up this way. There she is, running up to the podium. Commissioner, how are you? It's a pleasure to see you here today. I don't know if you want to go over a couple of things, and then we'll go directly into questions.
Yes,
We have the purer people sitting behind you.
we certainly do. Good afternoon.
All right.
I'm Katie Dykes, Deep Commissioner. Pleasure to be before the committee again. We fully endorse the governor's proposed midterm budget recommendations. There are a few adjustments that I would just bring to your attention. First, the governor's proposal provides funding for staff to support the implementation of the release-based cleanup regulations. We're very excited that we're coming up on a major milestone in March with the effective date of the new regulations, and this would include 2 positions that we have, had lots of dialogue with the working group about the need for these positions, specifically under the new regulatory framework. All new spills and newly discovered historical releases will need to comply with uniform cleanup standards, and so providing for this additional staffing will help the successful implementation of the new framework. In addition, we are proposing a funding for staff, 1 position, to support emergency spill response, cost recovery. As you're aware, we have a terrific team at DEEP that help with emergency cleanups of hazardous materials, and we're able to respond quickly to spills. Approximately, there's thousands of them a year, and then we seek recovery afterwards from responsible parties. And the allocation of funding for an additional position, in short, would enable our department to be able to recover more revenue from responsible parties than we are able to do today. We also would note that the governor's budget includes $200,000 to support a continuation of a statewide marketing and educational campaign to promote best practices to prevent bear encounters. We've been holding numerous workshops around the state to get listening sessions to hear from communities about, how living with bears, and we've heard in those listening sessions a lot of interest from the public for more educational materials and resources. We embrace both lethal and non-lethal methods ultimately as a solution to address the challenge of habituated bears in our state. This funding would provide for the ability for us to continue funding for the education portion there. And then I will just reference that the governor's proposal also includes line items to effectuate Public Act 25-173, which provided for PURA to be within DEEP for administrative purposes only. So the Public Act formalized effectively the relationship that's been in place for some time, where PURA has been conducting their business independently within DEEP as appropriate for an adjudicatory body. And this is this reallocation of funding to for the 88 positions and the budget there. It just effectuates that APO provision. And with that, there's lots in here, but happy to take questions from the committee.
So, thank you very much, Commissioner. So, a couple of minor questions, and I will be asking a lot more in the work group, but relative to the fish hatcheries, where are we with the fish hatcheries? And
Yep, certainly happy to help with that one. So, let's see, let me find that in here. Do you want to jump on that one quickly? Because I'm going to find it in my notes.
Thank you, Senator Austin. So as you are
Who
well
are you?
aware, I'm Andrew Hoskins. I'm the Chief of Staff at DEEP. So a few years ago, $1 million of funding was added to the hatchery line of our general fund budget. And then subsequent to that, a few years ago, 500,000 of that.
only last year.
Only last year, yeah. Was removed. And since then, we've been working on sort of an analysis of how we were utilizing the initial or the added $1 million. Some of that was to fund projects and things that were sort of more one-time costs, and some of that was to sort of raise the floor on the operations and maintenance, like baseline expenses. We're still kind of figuring out exactly where that line is, but we do think that there's an opportunity to move a lot of things that we were funding using part of that $1 million, move that to our capital budget, and we don't see the need to curtail hatchery operations during this biennium. And we'll continue to evaluate that with the reduced $500,000.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we are attending to some of the species that we've moved up north, the brown trout, and is that coming back, or what are we doing? And you guys do so much that I can't even begin to say that there's so much going on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Justin Davis. I'm the Chief of the Bureau of Natural Resources at DEEP, and I agree, I have a hard time keeping track of all the stuff we're doing. So I think you're referring to the Ellen brown trout,
Yes.
which are a special strain of trout
Correct.
that we raise at Kensington Hatchery. Because of their sort of unique characteristics, they do really well in lakes, grow really large, provide really good recreational fishing opportunity. We still are raising Ellen brown trout out Kensington Hatchery, and
Okay.
that program's still going, so still
Okay.
viable.
Okay, great. Thank you. You probably can just stay there. Where are we on NCON officers? The number of, and do we have enough that are dealing with our increased usage of our outside areas?
Yeah, so we are finalizing a report, which we'll be delivering to the legislature shortly, that details some of the changes or the trends in terms of our staffing for NCON. We have had several positions that have been added to NCON over the last couple of years. That has enabled us to, we've also seen a 50% increase in calls for service, but the addition of those positions over time has increased our productivity and our ability to carry out an increased level of enforcement responsibilities activities as well. So all of that is detailed in the report that should be coming any day now.
Okay, thank you. Representative Walker.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you very much. If you could, when you come to the work groups, I'm asking everybody to bring a high level of all of your different SIDs, what you do, who are you doing it for? I'm having a hard time here today. And any metrics that you use to judge your success in those areas. If you could bring those to the work group, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you said at the SID level?
Yeah, like all your line items here. You've got like the state superfund, site maintenance, like all these different things. What you're doing, like who you're helping, what you're doing, and what the metrics are. I believe you guys sent your OE already. I don't remember if you did. If you did not, if you could also bring a breakdown of your OE and what what are the different, what dollar amount you're spending for what in your OE, I would appreciate that.
You will have that.
Thank you.
Senator Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're speed questioning dialogue here, but thanks so much, Commissioner and team, all that you do. Yeah, I'm excited too about this transition on release-based. But my question is actually about Pura. So an independent agency, is that a quasi? Is that what's happening here?
No, they are within DEEP for administrative purposes only, so that means that they'll be able to take advantage or utilize some of those, administrative functions, payroll, HR, et cetera, business office, those types of things, but fully exercising all, decision-making and authority independently. We have other, for example, the Office of Consumer Counsel is within DEEP for administrative purposes only, citing counsel as well. So this Pura would be is in that framework as of 25, the bill that passed last year.
So we'll see them on a separate budget sheet, just like we do Consumer Counsel?
Yes.
And, okay, but we don't have that in front of us now.
That's what the proposal for the separation separates their budget into their own agency. Some of our APO agencies have their own budget, like OCC, some of the larger ones, and some of the smaller ones are only handful of people do not. They're just sort of rolled into lines within our budget. But Pura is 88 people, so they'll be a budgeted APO agency.
They'll have their own budget.
They will have their own budget. That's what the proposed change that the commissioner spoke about will do. It will effectuate that change.
Very helpful. Okay, and then this bear campaign, 200K. So I just look at the stats of our surrounding states, Massachusetts and so forth, and many more than we have, and fewer incidents. So I guess I'm just interested if this is a model that exists and it has been a productive model, or are we just kind of creating flyers?
Creating flyers?
Yeah, flyers.
Yeah.
No
You wanna talk
bird
about that?
feeders, no.
I really like feeding birds.
Yeah, but you can't.
You
anymore.
really shouldn't.
Yeah,
I know, but I like it. They like that.
This is why education campaigns are so important.
And I live in the country.
Held one in Avon.
Sure, so I can jump in here, and that's an excellent segue. Education campaigns are very important. I think across the country, in states that have bear populations, outreach and education has been really one of the cornerstones of helping people live safely and successfully alongside bears. We've invested a lot of resources along those lines here in Connecticut. A couple different marketing campaigns over the last few years. Our staff spend a lot of time going out into various communities across the state and doing educational programs. We do workshops to help people set up electric fencing, all kinds of things. So I think these efforts are really important to help educate folks about the steps they can take to avoid having conflicts with bears. And in the listening sessions that the commissioner mentioned that we've recently done around the northwestern part of the state, that was a clear message we heard from folks, is that they really felt like there was a lot of need for additional education for their neighbors and folks in their communities about the ways to sort of manage their trash, manage their house, manage everything in a way that sort of prevents bears from unfortunately coming to visit. So.
We've run campaigns in 2024 and 2025. We had a digital billboard as you were heading out west on 84 from Hartford. We've done online digital media ads. We've had over 13 million impressions across multiple channels for some of this marketing and education that we did previously, and we tailor it to those seasons of the year where we see increased bear activity, and to those communities where we see a lot of the bear conflicts. And we've utilized some of the strategies and tools such as BearWise and so on that other states have implemented effectively. And I think in the, Connecticut is unique in that we don't have a bear hunt in this state, but we do have this high population of habituated bears that have lost their fear of humans. And so these kinds of educational tools at the moment are kind of the most important effective tool that we have available to us to inform our human populations about ways, behavioral changes that they can make, including bird feeders and securing their trash and that sort of thing that can help keep bears and humans safe.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Ackert.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. Good to see you as always.
Always good to see you.
A couple questions. Back to the bears. In Coventry, we had bears in the pizza dumpsters, and I actually want to have a contest. Which bear makes which best pizzas there? But
that is a real Connecticut, yes, right.
Pizzas and bears tied together there. On the note regarding promotion, I hate to drive on our highways and see how many people died on the highways. Maybe we could say, hey, stop feeding the bears on those signs over the highways. It's free advertising. We don't have to use that. My question, though, the 8th district picked up 2 different towns, more lakes in the 8th district now, and a lot of more invasive species. How is because I get calls from my local, lake association saying it's taken time to get my grant, help battle the invasives, permitting, things like that. How is that process? How are we doing with that? Because now that I have more lakes, I get more calls. And the better we could do it, it's been productive. I mean, the hydrilla in Coventry Lake, it's a 10-year plan. It's working great. They're on top of it, but the Bolton Lakes are having some issues with getting their okay to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that question. I'm happy to address that. So aquatic invasive species are a challenge across the state. 2 pieces there, the funding piece and the permitting piece. On the funding end, the primary thing that the agency does right now is our AIS grants program. I think we're in our 6th round this year of that program. It's funded by the stamp that boaters are now required to buy when they register their vessel. This year we'll be handing out $400,000 worth of grants. We've handed out a total of almost $2 million from that grant program over the last 5 years. Unfortunately, it is pretty oversubscribed. So this year, we're going to hand out $400,000. I think we had about $1.3 million of requests. So we're doing the best we can with that program to address challenges where we can, but definitely the grant program is oversubscribed in terms of the number of people applying to it, asking for help. Other activities that the agency does, we have boating education assistants and AIS stewards who go out to boat launches across the state during the boating season to help educate people on things they can do to help not spread these aquatic invasive species around the state. We do signage at boat launches, educational messaging. We're hoping in the coming years to trial some boat wash stations at a couple of state boat launches using federal funds. So those are the way we're sort of using the funds we have available to us to address the problem. On the permitting end, we have been working this year specifically for hydrilla internally, and also working with some advocates who have reached out to us about this to come up with an expedited way to issue permits for treating hydrilla when it's newly discovered in a lake. Because we're finding that hydrilla can just spread incredibly rapidly. So once you find it in a given year, it's really important to be able to treat it in that year. So we're working internally on ways to expedite the permitting process for that purpose. And I think, generally, through our 20 by 26 initiative, we're looking for ways to streamline permitting across the agency. So I think there'll be benefits there for the sort of pesticides permitting that's part of treating aquatic invasive species as well. So we're definitely giving attention within the agency to try to streamline permitting as much as possible.
Thank you. Prior to the stamp, which I did support and did put legislation on that because, and I had it backwards. I said we should charge more for the bigger boats than the little boats. The bigger boats don't go, they're in the lakes, they stay in the lakes. The little boats go from lake to lake to lake to lake to lake and bring everything that along with them from one lake to the other. So I've learned a little bit about how the invasive species travel. How are we funding it before that stamp? Just the same way we are now, because you're only doing 400,000, so it's offset by state funds, I take it?
Yeah, so great question. My understanding is that we did not have a dedicated funding source like the AIS grants program prior to the advent of the stamp, is my understanding. But that also is a little bit before my time in this job, so we could come back with more detailed knowledge on that for the working session.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was just more curious. How do we bolster the account without, tacking more fees on to somebody? But I appreciate that and look forward to the working group opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So Commissioner, the emergency spill response, is that what was used for the train derailment that happened? And they took care of any of the, was that a significant spill response for you?
Certainly significant in terms of, long duration and a very complex, situation involving lots of responders. We have, in terms of the dollar amount expended, I think that is still, we're completing that, the response to that incident. So if you're asking in terms of like what the cost for the agency is, but we could come back to you with that. But I think that's kind of the example. Our first priority, as soon as we learn of any kind of a spill or emergency situation, is to get on the scene, secure the scene, keep things safe, and then after the fact, and we cover those costs with our state dollars. And then after the fact, to the extent that there's a responsible party, we want to go back and collect from the responsible party so we can reimburse or cover our expenses, and then any additional revenue would go to the general fund. And I believe there's probably about estimate $20 million outstanding that could be potentially recoverable from responsible parties. But we just, the idea here is give us an additional staffer that we can put on the task, and they will be able to, work on that project of getting the recovery of those expenses.
And the dam maintenance that your line item here, are you working to decrease the number of dams in the state of Connecticut?
So we have, adopted.
And Graham is inching his way up behind you.
Oh, Graham, come on up here. Get up here. Everybody wants. It's not an appropriate hearing unless we hear from Graham.
Hello, Graham Stevens, Bureau Chief of Water Protection and Land Reuse. Not that the commissioner couldn't handle this one, but just in case. Yeah, we are very interested in the removal of derelict dams that no longer serve their intended purpose, or that don't serve any benefit, or that have significant risks to the public from a public safety perspective. Interestingly, Connecticut's a small state, big in many ways, including in number of dams per river mile. We have more dams per river mile than any state in the country, over 4,500 dams. Those are not all monster dams that we think about, or waterfalls as some people call them, but each one has to be evaluated on a periodic basis. And these are pieces of infrastructure that require investment by owners to make sure that they remain safe. So we are always looking to partner with property owners, NGOs, municipalities, and, in one instance, tribes of Connecticut to remove dams that, the removal whereby would create a more resilient Connecticut, a safer Connecticut, and a better environment.
Thank you. So if you could just bring that data to the working group on.
We'd be happy to bring that, as well as some examples of some past successes.
Thank you.
I've been working on trying to streamlining some of the permitting process required for dam removals.
Yeah, part of our 20 by 26 initiative, we updated the state's general permits, including creating for the first time a general permit that does permit dam removal. That general permit was utilized recently on the Farmington River to remove a historic dam that was both a risk to public safety as well as an impediment to fish passage. Because it was partially breached, we were able to use that general permit to make that very expedited permit process.
Well, thank you for that. I always have a lot of questions for the work that all of you do, but I think we'll ask more questions when we get to the working group. Is there anybody else that has a question on?
I have my hand raised, Senator.
I should have known
Sorry.
Representative Dathan.
I'm sorry.
Up here.
Yes. Just
Quick
to
question.
bring to,
Make your
yes,
statements short.
I'm not going to
Short.
make a statement. I'm going to ask
No,
two
don't make a
questions for
statement.
the, I'm not, I'm just
Go ahead.
going to ask two questions for the working group. The first question is with the reorganization of PURA into a separate agency, how is that going to affect how things are working and the oversight and remedy that Deep currently is over PURA? And the second question
Before you go
is,
on any further, Representative Dathan, we're going to have Pura come to the work group. And
oh,
you
they
have-
are. Okay, great.
They have a separate sheet in the.
Yeah, I was going to say they have a separate sheet and I knew they were there, but I hadn't heard from them. My second question really was if you can bring to the working group the process for solid waste management permitting, coastal land management permitting, and power generation, especially around thermal loops and fuel cells permitting.
Just to clarify, you're looking for what are the permitting
Yeah, what?
permits are
Yeah,
required for those
yeah,
activities?
and the current like process and the sort of timeline for those.
Okay, great.
And that's it.
Just
All right.
very briefly, but just because, the change to having Pura be for administrative purposes only did not functionally really effectuate any change from the status quo because Pura has always been operating independently as appropriate to their adjudicatory role, even when they were within Deep as an agency. But happy to follow up in the working group, and I know our good colleagues, we have two of the Bureau commissioners who are here today.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. And we are zooming right into our last. We have Pura here. I don't know if you guys want to say anything, but you could come to any questions. Back for the work group. We'll see you later, Holly. Up next is Commissioner Dan O'Keefe from the Department of Economic and Community Development. Is going to come up and he's going to give us a couple of words on where we are, and then we'll have questions. Floor is yours, Commissioner. Great.
Except she's leaving. Yeah, absolutely.
Friday with bad weather.
You planned it.
Dan O'Keefe. I serve as Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development, also as the state's Chief Innovation Officer. Happy to be in front of you. Kelly?
Good afternoon. Kelly Valerie is the Chief Workforce Officer overseeing the Office of Workforce Strategy. We have an APO designation to DECD.
Likewise, Brandon McGee, CEO of the Social Equity Council, and we're also APO'd in the Department of Economic and Community Development.
So we're here to submit testimony in support of the governor's budget and are happy to answer any of your questions.
That sounds good.
How'd I do with the
You
brevity?
did great. That's what gave me enough time to ask a quick question, and so I'm all set now, Commissioner. Stop asking questions when I'm trying to do something. So, Commissioner, there are a lot of things that are also within the confines of your budget. One of them is statewide marketing. There's a number of bills in today to include some Senate priority bills. And we lost a really great guy, Anthony. Anthony was somebody that was top-notch and brought a lot of marketing into the state of Connecticut. Where do you see statewide marketing going?
You're absolutely right in talking about Anthony's work. I think he brought a creative lens that I frankly wish my brain worked the way his does. I think that pizza campaign was absolute creative genius. The way he leveraged putting billboards up in the city of New York, saying if you have any opinions about this, call this number, and then clipped all of those angry messages from New Yorkers with thick accents and put them on social media. We got 6 billion free media views. So I just want to thank him for all of his time working with us. Look, we've got a great story to tell. The economy has been incredibly strong. We're now the 4th fastest growing state in the country. We are seeing faster relative growth than we've seen in a generation. That is not hyperbole. That is genuine fact. That's the latest federal data. And we're seeing more and more people move to the state, which I view as an important KPI because that is people voting with their feet. You can't force someone to live somewhere. They're choosing to live here because it's an incredible place to raise your family and you start your business. We have promoted someone within the DECD to handle sort of marketing leadership. Anthony also built a very, very strong team. She is not Chief Marketing Officer, but we continue to leverage that team which is in place to continue to do the work that Anthony started. So the work will continue until we find a replacement. And I just think it remains an important function of the DECD, not just the DECD, but within the state of Connecticut.
Thank you for that. And I see that you put in your testimony the grants that have lost some funding, and I think we're going to have questions over that over the next little bit of time because I think it's going to be important for us to understand what is going on. That's some $4 million cut in that area. Various grants is the preponderance of that, $4,035,000. So I think we're going to have questions relative to that when you come to the working group. You have done a lot of work relative to economic development. Can you just give us an overview of where you think Connecticut is and where we're going?
Yeah, well, I break down the strategy into 2 broad buckets, defense and offense. Defense is a pun because what I'm talking about there is really supporting our established and existing industries. Our industry in support of our national defense is one of our largest. That's obviously advanced manufacturing. It's now 12% of our economy. And if you look at the growth I was just describing, so 4th fastest growing state in the country, we've added almost $10 billion to our economy in the 4 quarters prior to that date. So that is an incredible amount of growth, and its most significant contributor to it was advanced manufacturing. Bit of a surprise, a little bit, right? Because we are in the Northeast, input costs are high, but because where we're indexed, which is towards not just those national defense primes, but all of the supply chain companies, oftentimes mom and pop businesses, multi-generational in nature, that have been supporting those companies for a long, long time. It's a relatively protected industry. It's long-dated contracts, and there's a real prioritization to keeping that industry within our shores and within the state of Connecticut. So a lot of what we do is focused on that element of our strategy. Strategic supply chains is a good recent example where we were one of the first states, I think actually the first state, to put in place incentives that were anticipating rising protectionism. We didn't know where the president was going to go, but he was very clear that protectionism was going to be an element of it, and we wanted to take advantage of it. I am not a fan of protectionism. That is settled economic fact. Protectionism does not work over the long term. We've known that for over 100 years. That's been tried before. Today, the Supreme Court struck all of that down, but you can take advantage of it as a short-term measure. And so we put strategic supply chains in place to incentivize the repatriation of production capacity from under threat by tariffs regions to Connecticut. Very successful program. We saw the first $25 million go to some very interesting and great products, including manufacturing operations coming back to our shore, and we've replenished that with another 25 million, as you're aware. So that's sort of the defensive side of the house. And then on offense, this is really about next generation technologies and really thinking how we can take some of these truly step function innovations, things like artificial intelligence, things like quantum, and make sure that Connecticut is a place where they can apply in industries where we have comparative advantage. So what I just described is sort of easy to say, hard to do. What our point is, we're not just arm waving and saying this is all about AI. I know we see that in the headlines a lot, but this is really about how it applies in our core industries: finance and insurance, healthcare and biotech. I mentioned advanced manufacturing. These are all industries that will be fundamentally transformed and accelerated by those next generation technologies. So we've announced innovation clusters. Our first award went in and around New Haven and drug discovery, the discovery of new therapeutics. We've got 2 other finalists that we're still working with, and I hope we can eventually get to a place where those are credible projects that we can award. These are complex projects, really diverse ecosystems we're trying to activate with these dollars, so they take some time, but I'm relatively optimistic that we're going to get there. And then quantum CT. That was the first time collaboration between Yale and UConn. Believe it or not, our 2 R1 research institutions have never collaborated together. I'm just very excited that we were able to catalyze that and create a public-private partnership, which is Quantum CT. We are a finalist now for a $160 million National Science Foundation grant. And well, that we won't know the answer there until this summer, and I don't want to jinx us, but let's just say we're competing hard.
And our largest businesses, our largest industries in the state, you said advanced manufacturing. Did you have like 4 or 5 that are our top 4 or 5 businesses in the state?
That's like telling you which one are my best children. So I'm not going to tell you which ones are the best. I can tell you who some of our largest are.
Largest. I said largest. I didn't say best. I could have my own best too. Best. I did say largest.
I thought you said best. No, I mean, our national defense primes obviously well understood. So that's Lockheed and Sikorsky. That's RTX, which is Collins and Pratt, and then that's Electric Boat. These are very large companies, and I always like to point out that everyone talks about and hears about the brands I just said, but it's really about all of the companies that supply them, day in and day out. And I spend an incredible amount of time traveling the state, meeting with those folks. Finance and insurance, the Hartford and the Travelers and all the companies that we have in the insurance industry around the insurance capital of the world, right here in Hartford, are also some of our largest companies. And the other thing I always like to point out about these larger companies is they are also incredible members of our community. They get it. I spend a lot of time, as the governor does, with the leadership of those companies. And they're not just always asking what we can do for them. They're also very focused on how they can give back to their communities, focused on things like workforce development and training the workforce of our future. It's become a very constructive dialogue, and I think that's how it needs to be. I think everyone needs to recognize they're part of a broader community, part of a broader initiative about really making sure Connecticut thrives in the future. And I think, frankly, that's part of why we've seen such a great economic acceleration. It's really been, it's made my job a little bit easier.
Thank you. Representative Walker.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony and everything. And when you talk about the biggest companies, are you looking at it from their wealth or the number of people that in Connecticut that are based that work for them, the workforce that they generate?
Biggest I take to be revenue and employees.
Okay.
So that's how I was thinking about listing some of it. By the way, there's countless other companies that are of significant scale I could have mentioned, but those are some of our largest.
Because I think one of the industries that's one of our biggest is healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why I say this is because it's bringing people, they're moving to Connecticut for the healthcare. And we don't really wrap our arms around how we can structure it better. And I mean, we've got a multiple number of hospitals.
Yeah.
But they have feeders in them too. And I don't think that we've really done a good job of training or providing the workforce for them. We keep saying that they're nurses, but it's way more than nurses. And I think we undersell it too much because of the fact that it can hire people from every level of the economy and make a positive difference. And people are moving here from Florida like there's no tomorrow. Florida has such a wonderful health care. They're being very good for us. They're sending them here.
Yeah.
And people want to live. And so I mean, there's a lot of things that we could be generating around it, and I just don't see enough work going into creating that connection and allowing the entrepreneurial,
Yep.
but the vision and stuff, we keep it flat. I wish we would go beyond that
Yeah.
in many ways.
No, I when asked about the biggest companies, I started with what is the biggest part of our economy, which is advanced
Yeah.
manufacturing. But if you go down the list, it's finance and insurance, and then next is healthcare, including biotech. It is an incredibly important sector for us. If you look at jobs and where the job gap is, our biggest gap is nursing, which is why I suspect you mentioned that. I think there's full recognition in our economic comparative advantage is coming from a multitude of sources that we could sum up to call quality of life. Quality of life used to be the soft and fluffy thing. It's the reason why I moved my family here in 2011, but the reality is it's become hard economic comparative advantage because now, post-pandemic, with greater fluidity in labor markets, we're seeing people more able to choose where they want to live. And that has been a net positive for Connecticut. It's part of why we've seen economic acceleration. It's part of why we've seen our population increase every single year since the pandemic. It was not just a pandemic blip. If you break down population flows, historically, we gain people, and I'm just going to be summary characterizations here. We tend to gain people in their late 20s when they're starting families from places like New York and Massachusetts. We tend to lose them in retirement years. Those are broad flows we've observed for some time. One of those flows you just described, which is Florida. Let's just say the South. Let's not pick on any state, right? But we saw a lot of flow, particularly from places like New York. I guess I'm going to pick on certain states. New York's okay. Where we saw them flowing towards the Southeast. That was tax optimization. That was weather optimization. Right. And then they realized, I'll put it this way, they're sold a bag of goods. Because when you actually start to factor in things like the cost of insurance, things like the quality of health care, it's shocking to me that some states in the South are characterized as not having great healthcare systems when in fact they have a lot of an aging populace. You would think that would be the one thing they would be good at. But the reality is, folks like me who are now taking care of their aging parents, they've realized Connecticut is an incredible place to do that. It's not just a great place to educate your family, it's also a great place to take care of your family, as we go through those cycles. So historically, I've taken the economic trade. I'd rather get people at the beginnings of their earnings journey, and if I'm going to lose them, I don't want to, but at the end of their earnings journey, then fine. But now we've seen that reverse. Now, what's come under pressure, which I'm now not answering, I'm answering a question you didn't ask, but is international in migration.
Yep.
And if we're going to talk about population trends, we do have to talk about that, because what we've seen is we've seen domestic outflows, meaning we lose more folks to other states than we gain from other states. That has been happening for some time now because, again, we have an aging population here. And then we make it up with international in-migration. And the governor and I spent an incredible amount of time talking to folks, including internationally, that in an environment of uncertainty where a lot of people don't feel safe, that Connecticut is a place where you can feel safe. That is not a political statement, that's an economic statement. We want you to come here, we want you to build your family, we want you to contribute back, we want you to build your business here. And international in-migration, based on the latest federal data, was cut in half in Connecticut. It came down precipitously throughout the country because of all the rhetoric we're experiencing, but we did see it here too. It didn't come down so much that we went into population declines, but we didn't grow as fast as we were, and that all was because international in-migration got cut in half.
But we also saw that 65 and older was one of the fastest growing populations in Connecticut.
I affectionately refer to that as the boomerang effect. They're coming back.
I know, they left and said, oh, not so bad, I'll come back.
Exactly.
And I mean, but we are getting a lot, and with that are solid economic populations coming back who have their pensions and things like that. But going back, I want to go back to the healthcare for a minute, because the thing that I'm scared about is the fact that in order to have health care and to have all of these evolution, we have to have solid higher education. And we have to fund solid higher education. When you think about the things that you want to expand, and the research that Jackson Labs was one of our first ones that really showed us research and the values and the opportunities. I mean, I couldn't believe I was holding a mouse that was worth $2 million. I was like, this mouse here. But it just amazed me to see what was going on with the with the research and the development that was coming out of our higher education systems, and yet we are dropping what we put into higher education. I think that is the biggest mistake that this state is doing. I know I have this discussion with a lot of people, and everybody says, well, everybody doesn't need to go to college. College, you don't have to get a degree to get higher education.
Yeah.
You have to get the desire to learn and grow and develop.
Yeah. You know, I would just to comment on higher education for a moment. You know, I do sit humbly on the board of UConn, and humbly on the board of the college I went to, at a different state. And you know, part of why I have focused on that in this stage of my life and career is because I agree with you. I think higher education is not only incredibly important, but increasingly important in the age of AI, which we've now fully entered. I think the concept of real intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence, empathy, judgment, the ability to understand the needs of others, you know, those skills become more important as the world becomes more artificial. You know, in terms of its contribution to our economy, I also think, you know, we're seeing a bit of an assault at the federal level on long-dated, what we would call core research. You know, in the two schools I'm closely involved with, but we're all witnessing it even more broadly, you know, we're seeing some of these programs. And frankly, what I think is that the relationship between a government and its research institutions fray. And I think that is a really big problem for the long term. You know, in the short term, you could have a debate, but in the long term, you know, the kind of results we've we've received as a society from our research institutions is really undeniable. And if you think about some of our greatest problems we're still faced with, particularly in the healthcare space, you know, I think it's really important that relationship reinvigorate.
I do, and I realize I'm enjoying this conversation, but maybe it's because we've been talking budget all week, so this is breath of fresh air. But I having sat through a lot of the hearings and then listening to the higher education from the kids and from the others, I really am afraid that we're really not being very smart about how we spend the dollars for the investment of going forward. It's got to come through higher education, and if we don't take it and embrace it now, 5 or 10 years from now, we're going to be behind everybody else. And I really, really wish that we had that. So as far as the budget is concerned, the questions that...
So you've gone on to like 5 questions now.
I didn't have a question. We had a conversation.
No, well, we got other people on our list.
Okay, all right. There was one area that I noticed in here that I wanted to ask. Okay, go ahead. I'll come back.
Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question, I think, is going to be kind of around the 3 positions that we're adding for financial review and legal oversight. You know, there has been a large lack of that. We have seen that, you know, your area has commented on, you know, how much more we need to be doing. I was wondering if you could elaborate on how many positions you currently have doing that, how many this 3 would bring you up to, and how that's going to function, because I think we're going to be leaning on you guys to do a lot more financial oversight.
Yep. Let me make a comment, and I'm going to ask one of my team members. Can I grab your seat for a second? Maybe you can comment on the number of people currently in the group. I'll make an introductory comment. So I want to be clear about something. You said lack of resources on financial compliance and review. I would disagree with that only in this sense. You know, there is a difference between programs the DECD executes, where we have a full diligence and compliance process and team, and areas where they're legislatively directed, which historically we have administered, meaning we establish legislative intent and we facilitate the transfer, but we don't diligence it. That has historically been the approach. You are a co-equal branch of government with the power of the purse. That was how it had historically functioned. The governor has mandated that we change that, and we are. So I want to separate that statement. We don't have financial resources, or we're under-resourced. It was just in these 2 different areas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was more the lack that it was, not that it was your fault, but it, like you said, it wasn't happening on, you know, so that's more of it.
Yeah, I just wanted to separate the 2 areas, you know, and perhaps a bit of the nuance as to why that function didn't exist as robustly in legislative directed areas. And then maybe you can just comment on the existing team, how many folks. And
Hi, I'm Karis, and I'm the Director of Financial Review and Compliance at DECD. So right now, we're a team of 9. We do have 1 vacancy, but at full capacity, we are 9.
Okay, so we would be basically adding a third, like adding 3 more people.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. And then I've been asking everybody, and this is probably going to be a little tougher for you guys, but honestly, I think you'll probably have what I need quicker, because just from talking to you in the past, I know how on top of all of these things you are. I'm looking at all the different line items that you have here in this budget. Just wondering if you could please bring a high-level overview of what each of them does, and who that program is serving, and any metrics that you have for success on those there. And then my last thing is, did we actually end up getting rid of the cannabis fund and merging it? Because I see like there's nothing here.
Why don't you go first, and then I'll do the last.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I enjoyed the good commissioner talking here with Representative Walker. Yes, last session we requested that we move the Social Equity Innovation Fund into an account. That was the original intent of the legislation, and that's where we are today. It's an off-budget account. However, we still follow through with reporting to the Appropriations Committee and any other leadership body here in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you.
And then you had questions on what individual programs do and KPIs for success. Do you want to list, you have programs in mind? Or you want me just to
All
talk
of
about
them.
our programs?
All of them,
Okay.
all along it.
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask the team to keep me honest, because we have a lot of them.
I know you
so-
do, but you tend to be on top of it, so
Yeah,
I figure
well, I'll-
you
I'll ta-
probably have like a description of the majority. Of
Happy
these.
to, and I'll
Not
talk
now,
about.
like for the work group.
Oh,
Yeah, not
Oh.
now, for the work session.
Spare yourself.
I was ready.
No, you're good, but.
No, not right now.
Not in this time frame.
But I really like to talk.
We
Happy to
know.
follow up with that.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think the weather is also in your favor here, too, moving everybody along. Thanks so much for being here and for all the work that you do and your team and so forth. I mean, coming off of the pandemic and then the natural disaster situations where we had businesses literally floating down the street, you know, it's been a journey. But I think the department has stood out in terms of, you know, rising to the challenge. There'll be a lot more where we can really dig in when we get to our work group, because I know Senator Austin has got the clock ticking here. But let me just start by saying, top of mind, front and center is energy, and I think a large part of what we are missing in this conversation is the economic piece of this. And I appreciate the cognizance that we have established in the General Assembly, but I think we are moving well beyond that, and the Department of Economic and Community Development needs to be an equal partner, sitting at the table, putting together our strategy, our plans, and what we're going to do. So I'm going to be looking forward to seeing that DECD has a leading presence in this subject. And I don't know if you want to comment on that, Mr. Commissioner, but I think it is well past the time that we have that presence in this conversation. It is an economic, and you could bring it down, you know, on the business level, on the personal level. It is an economic issue.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I have said, you know, energy is not my lane until it becomes the #1 existential threat to our continued economic progress.
Which it is.
Which makes it my only lane. So Commissioner Dykes, I just saw her on the way out. I mean, she and I have, we have partnered on this effort. In fact, I just met with her team earlier this week to talk about some of these issues. Where we find ourselves is, you know, this is one of these areas where I get frustrated, because the problem is the system. The problem is, and these have been built up over 20 years of decisions that were often made for great reasons at the time. But if you step back and look at the system we've created, first of all, it's regional. So it isn't just Connecticut that has high energy prices. It's all of New England. We are a regional grid, and the entire region has this challenge. There are differences in transmission and distribution across that make up for small differences. But the reality is our wholesale energy rates are a problem for the entire region, which means we need a regional solution. Commissioner Dykes has gotten almost every state, live free or die New Hampshire disagreed, but every other state has agreed to come in on to work with us on a nuclear procurement. I do not see a carbon-free future that does not include nuclear as a meaningful portion of the pie, so I think that's incredibly important that Commissioner Dykes was able to do that, and I want to give her a lot of credit. This is like a UN exercise, getting New England states to collaborate, so
Agreed.
she did an incredible job with that. But I also think we need to be adjusting our strategy and our timelines such that relative price becomes the input, not the output. That's the problem with the system. The system is solving for timelines, carbon-free by X date, rather than solving for invest a pace in renewables while we transition, but keep our energy prices competitive. We are suffering through a lack of optionality. So the strategy that we have been pursuing is an all of the above strategy. We need to be pursuing every source of energy, and we need to be doing that for two reasons. One is that we are already overexposed. 12% of our economy is manufacturing. That is a high energy input industry. And I talked about what a disproportionate contributor that, despite that, is still to our growth. So we have a challenge right now we need to work through. And then if you look at the innovations I talked about, AI and quantum, these are energy-centric innovations. And it just, we're far past the moment where we can have this infighting. And we really just have to recognize that we have a really big issue here that is negatively impacting our quality of life. And just start working on the big, bold, transformative decisions that can change that trajectory. It will not be easy, but I have committed to the governor that I am happy to be involved, and I like hard problems, so we're on it.
So we will look forward to seeing a very strong presence, an equal presence in this conversation with regard to the economy and energy. Thanks very much for your comments on that, Commissioner. I can't tell you how concerned I am about our tourism operation. We have done great, but here we are on life support with $4.5 million in our line item. Just look around at our immediate neighbors. This does not work. And so, we've had this conversation, Commerce Committee, many legislators about, dedicating a percent or all of it on the meals tax money. And the brick wall is the intercept. We can't do an intercept from the budget. We've got the same proposals this year. I don't know if we're going to get the same answer.
Yeah.
If we get a different answer, okay, then, we've got a whole other conversation to be had. However, I think that, and we've lost some very talented personnel, and I quite frankly think part of the reason is that because we haven't resourced it appropriately, and that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
And so I'm looking for a real initiative with, and I understand we're in this kind of limbo period right now. I don't want to make any mistakes that we get locked into, any cement boots here, but what happens next has got to be transformative, and you have got to light up this sector. So I look forward to talking about that, and we have some thoughts. So I'm not going to ask any more questions, but I am going to ask if, when we get into the work group, that I can have a thumbnail of the CIF program, because it says CIF 2030. Is that when it ends, 2030, or no? It's, hi, CIF. You don't have a name anymore. You're just CIF.
Yeah. Matt Puglisi, Deputy Commissioner, and the CIF program, the Community Investment Fund 2030 is how it was written in legislation. The program has been in effect since 22. We have 2 rounds next fiscal year as the remaining amount of money that is under the current 5-year authorization. And then the original legislation had the optionality of the legislature extending that for an additional 5 years. So we have one more year on the books.
So the extension for an additional 5 years is going to require an affirmative legislative act.
Yes, it would require an extension by the legislature.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like the greatest irony of ironies. No date is actually 2030. It's 28, and then another 5 years from.
I don't know what that is. I was confused. But what would be very helpful is kind of a thumbnail. This was premised that it was going to be very specific. It is for transformational projects. And so often I get requests, well, we need a boiler. Could we go to CIF? We need a roof. I was like, no, that's not transformative. And so I'm just interested to see how we've done and what those transformative projects are as we begin to prepare for another round. And then I also am very interested to see the progress we've made on SHPO and the changes that we've made, that in fact they have been putting things in the right direction. So just some kind of a summary there would be helpful. And then you could talk to me when we get to the work group about our makerspace legislation. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And when you bring her the CIF, bring what projects, where they stand, have they spent any of the money? And on the SHPO, are we now taking CIA funds to support staff? Is there a plan to do that? Because rumors abound.
Yeah, we are not, Kyle Abercrombie, Chief Administrative Officer with DCD, we are not doing that at this time. Last year, when there was concern over whether we would get the federal funding or not, we scrambled to come up with the interim solution to keep the staff that we have that are federally funded. And that was a proposal we floated, and it's part of our legislative recommendations this year, but it's not it's in front
But
of you.
not planned to be in at least in the next fiscal year.
That's right. There's nothing in place for that to happen.
Thank you. Representative Ackert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner, good to see you. I still remember the story dealing with AI and the red flag story that you told that was still embedded in me regarding that. So,
a lot of fun at cocktail parties. All I do is talk about AI these days.
Yeah, I can imagine. You and Senator Maroney, I think. So, so just on another note, you talked about the businesses in Connecticut and the amount of employment growing. One of the largest growing employment sector, to my dislike in a way, is warehouse workers. And we have, a landscape that's changing in Connecticut that I'm not happy with. And so, when you think about the insurance capital and all the other things that we do and all the good corporations that you talked about that are bringing high quality jobs to Connecticut, how did we become the big box location? Or is it just everywhere? Are we just replacing, malls with warehouses?
So a couple themes here to talk about on the increase in warehouse space and what's happened to shopping malls are both part of the same trend, which is the penetration rates of online commerce. So we have seen Amazon, for example, and it's likely who you're referring to, be one of the largest growing companies in the state in terms of jobs. I'm just sitting here saying to myself, though, I don't know that I would say I don't know if you're saying those are lower quality jobs, but in many ways, particularly with AI penetrating some of our other industries, I'm like, these might be the jobs of the future. I guess, it requires a degree of physical interaction. But we did launch Grayfields, which we haven't talked about yet. We launched Grayfields as a program. It's based on brownfields. So if you remember brownfields, which is a great program, and it goes after physical plant for which the economic use case has moved on. In that case, it's these old mills and these old plants. And I love the program because you get a double benefit. You bring down the blight, you get something new and amazing in its place. Grayfields, which unfortunately I named. That's what happens when a finance guy names something. It wasn't very creative, but the analogy holds, which is we now have a new form of infrastructure, knowledge worker buildings and shopping malls, which are the mills and the plants of the current era, which need to be reimagined. And we are a real estate constrained state. We don't have a lot of green fields, so we need to recapture our infrastructure to have economic renewal. So the trends I've seen, the increase in warehouse space, I have not, and I can't say I've looked at the data at that level per state, but I have not heard any of my contemporaries, for example, talk about that as being unique to Connecticut. I do think that is just penetration rates of e-commerce, and it's logistics, right? You need to move this stuff around. If it's no longer going to be a person going to get it, you have to have the infrastructure to do the last mile delivery. In terms of a question you didn't ask, but I think is emblematic of a challenge we're faced with right now, is we are seeing GDP growth, economic output, outpace job growth. We have re-achieved our job peak that we had last hit in March of 2008, just before the global financial crisis. That's the good news. But the bad news is, and the other piece of good news is our economy is expanding so quickly. But the bad news is jobs are not growing as quickly. From an economics perspective, one might argue that's a good thing. That's productivity, that's efficiency. But from a person who thinks every day about how do we get jobs, it's not a good thing. And by the way, I don't think that disparity, well, one, I know that disparity is not unique to Connecticut. We are seeing that throughout the country. The question I often get is that AI? And I don't think it is yet. I think what it is automation and robotics, particularly given the manufacturing industry we have here. But AI is coming, likely is already here. There might be some delay in hiring, companies thinking they can leverage technology to do what a person does. But I don't think it's here at that degree of scale, but it's coming. So we spend a lot of time in the DECD thinking about the workforce of our future, the industries of our future, and just making sure we're doing everything we can to prepare for what will be a change. I mean, there will be a change in the nature of work as we work through this.
Thank you, and I have the, because I got to, I'm not picking on the warehouse owners or the jobs that they're providing and the work that they do. I mean, they're reacting to us, the consumer, that wants to go online and have it delivered by 5 o'clock that night, and that's what's happening.
Yeah,
that's what's happening. It's going to happen more and more, but the technology is going to be that we don't need workers.
Yep.
We don't need salary workers because we've replaced you. When I watch the automation there, it's impressive. It's really impressive. And so I think that's the switch rather than, the good paying, whether it's machinists or CNC or me, I'm in the trades, and thankfully right now we're not being replaced by any AI, right now, but, so.
Trades might be the safest job there is at this point.
Yeah, and we're doing well. We haven't figured out, when somebody said that they saw a robot doing compound taping, and it wasn't a robot, it was actually a human with an automatic tape gun. I'm like, that's not a robot.
Love it.
So it's like, so we're still hanging in there. But again, thank you for all that you do and the group that you're associated with here, and appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Cabros DeGraw.
Thank you so much. Good to see you. First of all, thank you for Great Fields, because I have a project in Avon that I'm hoping might end up with a little bit of it. So excellent. One in Canton as well. Quick question under OWS, Career Connect. I will ask slowly so you have a moment to sit. I have concerns about just how that's going to be funded moving forward, and I want to make sure that it's robust, because the challenge that we're seeing, especially with people falling off of SNAP, there's all more workforce requirements, workforce training, that sort of thing. So I'm just wondering, what is the plan for that, if there already is one?
Great. Well, thank you very much for that question and for the focus on Career Connect.
No, don't do that. You turned off everybody now. When you hit that last button, you turn it.
Those programs, and 80% of completers are employed, and those numbers will continue to increase. We do have some bond dollars that were authorized last year, and we received, that was $30 million, and we received $10 million of those dollars allocated. So we're right in the process now of looking at how we're going to be dispersing those dollars. But we're also looking to leverage them with matches from philanthropy. So we do have some significant philanthropy organizations that are really interested in how they can continue to fund Career Connect. But the question always comes back to, what is the state going to do around the sustainability piece of it? But I think that we will continue to braid funding sources, and that's one way that we can provide some of that sustainability. We also have Workforce Pell that is coming down the pike, and we will be able to take some of these short-term training programs that have real high output and be able to have them funded through short-term Pell. There's a lot of roles and rulemaking that has to happen on the state level, and we're in the process of doing that now across many of our partner agencies that are required partners in that. But one of the really great things about Workforce Pell is it has a definition of high demand, high skill, high wage, and it has to have at least a year's worth of data to say that there's a 70% completion rate and a 70% placement rate. So we know with Career Connect, and many that we funded 68 different programs with Career Connect, that we will have data and programs that will meet those standards out of the gate. And we're working very closely with CSCU and CT State, because the other component of that is that they have to be stackable to a credit program. So that's the other piece of this, that it's a really great way to get people started on a career trajectory and get them into college. And that really, we know that the more credentials and the higher credentials people earn, the higher their wages are. And so that's really a great thing about Workforce Pell. That will be a component of sustainability for us.
And you're saying Pell, like Pell Grant, right?
Correct. So it allows people to utilize a certain amount of their Pell funding to go towards non-credit programs, but the programs have to be run by an accredited institution so that it ensures that stackability. Welcome.
Thank you. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your work and presentation today. A couple of questions. One, here you're talking about energy and nuclear energy, but I'm hoping also that you're thinking about geothermal, utilizing what we have, and also using green hydrogen for fuel cells. Those are things that are available right in the community and could be utilized. And I didn't know if you had done a cost-benefit analysis or did some kind of ratio-based analysis so that we could take a look at what would happen. For example, with respect to nuclear power, putting the small nuclear things in the ground, would that have an impact perhaps on the groundwater? And if there is, how would we do the cleanup? So I'm just concerned about moving so quickly towards nuclear power without utilizing what we already have in existence, and that is, again, geothermal and fuel cell technology, which is being utilized in my district at Eastern Connecticut State University, also our federally qualified health center for the geothermal, and Horizons, which is also another area where we have a good geothermal network. And I didn't know if you had any ideas on that.
No, I described it as an all-of-the-above strategy, and I mean that emphatically. I think it needs to be an all-of-the-above strategy. We need as much supply as we can get. I didn't pay attention every day in business school, but I know if you can get supply up, and you can bring prices down. We have not done the studies you described. Deep may have, that would be more their purview than ours. We're more focused on, what would be the impact on our economy if energy prices were lower. Right now we're experiencing growth we haven't seen in a long time, and yet our energy prices are 140% higher than the rest of the United States. I can sell a lot of things about Connecticut. I can sell our workforce. It's a high-cost labor force, but it's high quality. People are willing to pay that. I can sell the quality of life. I can sell the quality of healthcare. I cannot sell a megawatt that is more than 2x more expensive than the rest of the United States. So we are focused on all of the above to get prices down and more comparable with what we're seeing throughout the rest of the country.
Thank you so much for that. And also, following up on the State Historic Preservation Office, I just wondered, we do have a new procedure in place now, and I wondered how that was working, and if you could bring to the working group information about how this is working with respect to historic buildings in areas that cannot afford to maintain them if they get transferred to the town because they're condemned.
We'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Dathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and was going to ask for two things to be brought to the work group. The first is the detail on the other grants of the that are looking at being cut. I think it's 4,000,000, 4,035,000 various grants line item. And just want to see how that, because that does affect a lot of programs all over the state. The second thing I was hoping to have brought to the work group was some of the focus that we are doing towards workforce development, particularly around CNAs and LPNs. And I know we've talked a lot about this in the past, and we did put some great COVID dollars and ARPA dollars behind some of these proposals. And they are really producing a great workforce, which is very much needed. I'd like to get a better understanding how we are continuing to focus in on that and how we can help programs like what we have in New Canaan at the Waveney CNA program, which was funded with some ARPA dollars.
We'd be happy to follow up with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Dillon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good to see you.
It's great to see you. I guess I just wanted to suggest a couple of thoughts going forward to the work group. And the first has been discussed many times, and that is the energy issue by yourself. But we've talked about my concerns about the proposals in Washington to cap indirect costs, which I first thought of Jackson Labs, to be honest, and then I realized that it also affected South Central Connecticut. Whether or not we have a plan in place, and I know you've heard me out on this, if, say, there's a drop to even 30%, it could be devastating to part of our research capacity. And so that's the first question, whether you have a plan in place or suggestions.
Yeah, so the answer is no. Doesn't mean there shouldn't be, but there is no plan in place, at least within the DECD. There may be in other parts of the administration. The challenge we have, the representative is referring to indirect costs for research, which has often been funded, allowing our research institutions to have people, not just the research itself, but people doing the work. And this federal administration has been working to reduce the ability to do that. Again, I go back to what I said before about higher education. I think that the relationship between government-funded, long-dated research, government and research institutions funding long-dated research has propelled our economy and our society forward and shouldn't deteriorate, but it is deteriorating. Where the challenge becomes is, federal funding in the state of Connecticut is $14 billion. That was a number released by the Comptroller's Office, and we don't have the ability to replace all of that. I think I'm talking to appropriations. I'm stating the obvious, and so it forces real prioritization. And as we've talked about, when we talk about tourism or the arts, we're already in a world of trade-offs. So I'm happy to look at it. I'm happy to have conversations about it. I'm happy to see if there are others within the administration. It's not something that has happened or would likely happen within the DCD, but if others have focused on studying the impact. But I do think you're right. That kind of that it will have an impact that is problematic.
And there are numbers on that actually from national scientific groups. I guess my second question, I have other questions about that, but it's late and it's Friday, and you've been very generous with your time.
And we have 100 people to hear from.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. My second question was about land, and whether or not we look at the availability of land as something, and without sounding like Henry George here, but really, I had wondered whether some of the competition for nonprofits had to do with the desire to acquire each other's real estate. And so I wondered whether you had included in any of your models or looked at in terms of growth the distribution of land statewide, really, without getting into some of the issues we dealt with last session.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I referenced before that we are in a land-constrained state. When you compare our availability of land to other states from an economic development perspective, we are constrained. That's what happens when you're one of the older states and one of the smaller states. It's just math. So that's why many of our programs focus on reclaiming and repurposing infrastructure, broadly defined, that no longer has the same economic use case it once did. And it's why all of our programs focus on trying to help our communities that have not benefited from some of the growth and the success and the economic vibrancy that has happened in other parts of the state. And I think that's what you need to do. I think you need to be creative. You need to have programs that incentivize renewal, and you have to recognize that certain parts of the state haven't benefited as much as others from our economic growth and prioritize programs in that fashion. And we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner, thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you at the work groups.
No, I got one more.
Oh, my God.
So close.
So close, so close.
But it was open, the door was open, and it's about what I think the mission of social equity is, and what you just talked about the fact that there are many communities in the state that haven't not felt the growth that everybody else has. And we do an abysmal job, because we try to do it in little, and that's why you have a lot of these little businesses here, or they're nonprofits or startups and things like that, but we don't do it enough to be sustainable, and that's what you said. We have to focus on how to do that, to make it more broad. And I was going to bring that up earlier, because what we do is we end up saying, people thinking that everybody, they all have to be there needs oversight, which it does. But part of it is we haven't developed them to understand how to do their own oversight so that they don't get into those problems.
Yeah.
And we need to do it. And we started doing it in some of the other grant areas that we've had in the area, and we're developing those, and we're creating oversight, and we're doing all the things basically to try and teach people to how to develop their achievements, their goals, and their measures.
That's right. I think that's right.
It's ad hoc. It's ad hoc. And so therefore, we keep that that population insecure. Yeah. And we go up and we go down, but they don't feel the growth that we have in Fairfield or in Litchfield or any of the other areas around here.
No, I mean, look, we have one of the greatest degrees of economic disparity in the country in the state of Connecticut. We acknowledge that, we recognize it. And the work we do every day is prioritizing those communities that have greater challenges. That is very much a priority. Now, does that mean we could do it better? The answer is absolutely yes. Does that mean we can do it with greater scale? Partially that's up to my co-equal branch of government, but I think we can do it with greater scale. And I think there is broad recognition throughout the administration that this work needs to be intentional. And again, I wake up every day trying to be as intentional as I can be.
Well, we would like to see that partnership a little bit more focused and broad and clear, because we're not seeing that. And so therefore, that's something that I would like to put up in the priorities next to the other things that you listed, the AI, everything else. And AI is part of that growth too, and things like that. So we've got to be more equitable in the state. And we got to keep that focus and not villainize people. We need to say they don't have the skills. We need to help create the skills.
Hear, hear. You have a supporter in everything you just said.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to try this once more. I think we're all set.
She's right there.
Kelly, you're coming to the work session, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say, she's
Brandon,
right
you
there.
come to the work session. Very good. We'll ask a lot of questions there. Matt, we'll all call you because we all call you now. So, thanks, everybody. Bree, don't go anywhere. I have a question for you. All right, everybody have a nice night. Thank you.
everyone.
We're going to end our
Everybody drive
agency
safely.
briefings right now. Thank you.
Thank you.